Welcome to Tuesday, January 12th, 2016, meeting of Committee of the Whole for Grand Blanc Township. And I'd like to start it out with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'd ask Mr. Anderson to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll move into approval of the agenda.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda for the Tuesday, January 12th Committee of the Whole.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Moving forward with the agenda, we'll go on to public comment. Is there anybody here that wishes to participate in public comment? Oh, I thought you were coming this way.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Anybody for public comment? Third time, anyone for public comment? In that case, we'll close public comment. And now I'd like to have the presentation by Rodwin Consulting, by Sandy Rodwin, in regard to retiree health care actuarial report. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to meet with the Township Board.
Sam?
It should be, you'll tap it.
Okay.
Does everyone have a copy of the report?
We're
You will in a
we're
moment.
just getting them. They just
Okay. Well, the purpose of this report is to give you the results of an actuarial evaluation that we performed in order to determine what the liabilities are associated with the benefits that are promised to and paid to retirees for the township as far as the health insurance benefits. And within the last 4 years, 5 years maybe, these retiree health benefits have become under a lot of scrutiny for the costs that are associated with them and how well they're being funded. And the Governmental Accounting Standards Board at that time, a number of years ago, issued statements telling us how to prepare actuarial evaluations so that the municipalities could properly report the liabilities. And this evaluation is computed in accordance with those guidelines issued by the Accounting Standards Board. There are new standards, and I'll just address that briefly at the end, which are a little more involved actually than the current standards. But this report starts out in giving you just a little idea of the people included in the evaluation, the participants. If you turn to page 2, just so you have some framework. The total number of active employees, on page 2 there's a little chart in the middle, which shows that there are active employees, 80 people who are currently not receiving retiree health benefits, but would be eligible to upon retirement. And retirees, there are 33. So you only have 80 active employees relative to 33 retirees who are currently receiving benefits that are paid by the employer for their retiree health benefits. And the amount of those benefits is about $630,000 annually. That's what they are being paid. So what we have to do is take all of the information that we are provided concerning each of these active employees and the retirees and what they're being paid, and determine what the present value is of those accrued benefits that they're going to receive. Compare that to the assets that are stowed away right now for that. Find out what the unfunded liability is, and then amortize that unfunded liability as well as pay a contribution toward the cost of accruing service for the current active employees. So if you'll turn to page 4 in the report, you'll see where we have computed the actuarial accrued liabilities. And the top of the page shows those accrued liabilities. And before we go into just what the numbers are, I'd like to explain how we get those numbers. And one of the things that we have to do is make long-term assumptions about what's going to happen in the future. And that would include assumptions about what's going to happen to the people, when are they going to retire, or if they're going to retire, maybe they will terminate before they're eligible, that kind of thing. Might they get disabled? At what point will they, pass away? So even if they do retire, when do they pass away? And those are the kind of assumptions that we have to make long-term. And we make those assumptions based on our experience with working with a lot of municipalities. And we've been doing this for many, many, many years. And of course, things change, and every municipality is a little different. But I think, those kinds of things help us to give good estimates. Those are the demographic assumptions. Probably the trickier assumptions are the economic assumptions, the key one of which is the long-term investment return assumed on the assets. And as I go through these numbers, you should keep in the back of your mind that we have assumed a 7.5% long-term assumed discount rate. And I will address that issue in just a moment. But let's look at what the accrued liabilities are. For active employees, about $7.5 million, the far right column on that top schedule. The retirees and beneficiaries, more of a liability, $9.5 million. And the total accrued liability is therefore $17 million. Do I have the right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The funding value of assets, those are the assets that were recorded set aside, are $4.6 million. And that would leave unfunded liability of $12.4 million. Now, if we had assumed a lower rate of investment return, we would have much higher liabilities than those shown. The present value of the benefits would be much higher. And it's been pointed out to me that the assets currently are in CDs and very short-term instruments, which are not expected to earn a rate of 7%, 7.5%. In fact, we all know where the short-term rates are now. They're under 1%, so they're almost zero. And if we assume something like that, those liabilities would skyrocket. And what I plan to do is compute those for you, since I know that you don't have, now that you don't have invested assets in something that may or may not earn 7.5%. You're certainly not going to based on those.
Can I ask you a question on the mechanics here
Yes,
of this? So at the 80 employees with the $7 million value versus the 30 with the 9,
Right.
is it because you're assuming a fair number of those 80 aren't going to make it? And
That's part of it, and plus they are a little further away from getting benefits. The retirees now are getting
Locked in.
benefits, and so the present value, they're not discounted very much. It's just over their future lifetimes.
Okay.
And their benefits tend to be higher than what's expected for future retirees, to the extent that some changes have been made in coverages and so forth to provide less premium cost for the newer retirees than the older ones. That answers your
Thanks.
question. So when you look at those numbers, you have to put them in perspective that they would be much higher. The unfunded liability would be much higher, and you will find that out when I revise these numbers to show that. But what we did then, once we get this information, then we say, all right, what is the computed contribution which would fund these benefits somewhat systematically, instead of just going on a pay-as-you-go basis, instead of like Social Security saying, all right, this is what we have to pay out, this is what we have, but doing some pre-funding. And we've shown the contributions expressed as percents of active employee payroll. And the first the row, normal cost, and if you go far over to the right, it says 10.57%. That is the percent of pay for active employees that would be required to pay for their benefits as they work, to accumulate to the value of their benefits at retirement. So let's say at retirement, the present value of their retiree health benefits might be, $300,000. The idea is that if theoretically, if 10.5% of pay were put in to the fund for each of the active employees from the time they hire in to the time they retire, by the time they retire, that amount of money plus the investment return earned on that, and here we're assuming 7.5%, would be sufficient to be equal to the present value of their benefits. So that's what that first line is. That's only for the active employees. Now, we saw that unfunded liability on the top, and that's $12.4 million. That we amortized over 30 years as a level percent of payroll. And we use 30 years because that's the maximum period allowed for financial reporting. Clearly, that's spreading out the debt quite a ways, because you have your active employees. A large percentage of them are over 65. Many of them will not be with us in 30 years. And you're going to be paying for benefits long after some people are no longer getting benefits. So the 30 years was chosen to give you the maximum, or the smallest actually, contribution based on accounting standards. But I think it would be reasonable to use a shorter amortization period. And in fact, new accounting standards will have a shorter period for recognizing the expenses. So the total contribution is the sum of those 10% of pay for the normal cost and 18% of pay for the unfunded accrued liability. And we're assuming that that the percent should stay the same, but the payrolls are increasing at 5% a year. Well, payroll is probably not going to increase 5% a year, but that's how this was computed. Payroll really has no major impact on these calculations. If this were a pension plan, it would. A pension plan that relates benefits to your salary, and that's the way most public employee pension plans operate. These health benefits have nothing to do with people's salary. So anyway, the total contribution, 28.79% of active employee pay. And if I multiply that by the active payroll of 4.3 million, I get a dollar contribution of $1.2 million, which would satisfy the governmental accounting standards. But given the fact that the 7.5% assumption is higher than probably what would be expected based on the short-term nature of your assets, we would say a much higher contribution and much higher liabilities based on the shorter amortization period as well as the investment return assumption. Now, the other key thing that goes into this is, what do you assume? Yes?
Can I just want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm reading and hearing here. So valuation payroll of 4.3 million, that's our current payroll.
That's your current active employee payroll.
And 1.2 million is what we would need to contribute annually.
1.2 million the first year, and then that's assumed to increase 5% a year
Okay.
with the inflation assumption.
Basically cover that $12 million we have up above as the unfunded liability.
Which, since you're paying out about $600,000 now, so it's it's not too much over what you're paying out now.
Right.
And so you're looking you're looking at significantly increasing funding requirements, going forward.
And so the new governmental standards are dictating that.
They are, and also the 7.5% was chosen and could be used if, let's say, you were invested, whatever, 60% in stocks or 50% in stocks. They have those typical ratios that you get, invested in bonds and some cash. But if you don't plan to totally pre-fund your benefits, then you can't, even under current standards, you're not supposed to use that 7.5%. If you're not intending to fully fund every contribution, like this year paying 1.2 million and the next year, whatever it is. Now the new standards, which we've been working with on the pension side of things, really change matters and make every plan, virtually every plan, look worse than it did, whether it's a pension plan or a retiree in a health plan. Because as actuaries, what we have to do is project out what the assets are going to be based on what the funding policy is for the municipality. Do that projection. On the other hand, project out what the benefit payments are likely to be for 100 years, mind you. Now, I think some of this you have to take with some grain of salt when you get up to 100 years, but in any event, that you have to do that. And then at any point, the assets are not sufficient to pay for the benefits that are payable in a year. You can't use, even if you're promising to pre-fund as recommended, you can't, if that happens, you have to say that any benefit payments expected to be made after the point in time when there aren't any assets left, so going pay as you go, you can't assume any investment return assumption higher than the short-term rate that the municipality could get, which right now obviously is extremely low. But and if we were to do this assumption, assuming whatever a 1% rate of return, the results would be really skewed.
So the new standard for the health.
The new standards will make everybody look,
Would be similar.
And those numbers are going, not the projections, but what happens then is, so you have to use this, if you were pre-funding, you were investing in stocks and bonds, and you were assuming 7.5%, that's fine, but you couldn't, after, let's say you reached 25 years, you got into that deficit position, you just were just paying as you go. Then that would be, like what's being used for pensions now is the 20-year municipal bond rate, which is about 3%. So then you get a merged, so instead of assuming 7.5%, you would assume something that, like 5.5 or 6, some merged rate. But almost every plan is going to have to, will have to report unfunded liabilities and contributions, expenses. No longer will the computed contributions in the actuarial report be the contribution that would show up as the expense in the financial statements. Now it's the expense will be higher because any change that you make in assumptions has to be recognized right away, and it just, you can't amortize it over 30 years. So what I'm emphasizing is, I think, to every municipality that I talk with, but it's imperative that you realize you've got a big liability here, and you have to address it, and it's going to be addressed in your financial statements for everyone to see that bothers to read the financial statements. That change in the accounting for the plan reporting would be for years beginning after June 15th of 2016, so it'll be like another year from now, the end of another year, for your municipality's financial statements, and where it shows the unfunded liability right in your financial statements. That would be the next year, so it would be a couple of years down the road. So that's I think those are the high points of what, I wanted to leave with you. There may be some, you may have other questions. We could look briefly at the assumptions that were made. Oh, I know, one major thing I didn't mention. In a retiree health valuation, another key assumption is what kind of medical care inflation trend are we looking at? And this was based on a 5%, the main results that we were looking at were based on a 5% assumed medical trend inflation rate. We also gave results, and that would be on the page 5, which shows the alternate results based on assuming that in the first year, 8% would be the rate of medical care inflation, and then that would go down in increments of a half down to the ultimate 5%. And it comes out with a little bit higher numbers than you just saw before. And you might say, well, what is the actual medical trend rate? Well, it depends on what piece of paper you pick up or who's, there's all sorts of different ideas about what that might be. What we've noticed in the past few years is that prescription drugs have been increasing at very high rates. That seems to be maybe tapering down relatively, and overall probably 7-8% is probably a reasonable expectation right now. But of course, with there are a lot of unknowns with the Affordable Care Act and various provisions that are just coming into play now and or this year. So I think that will have a bearing as well. And we don't know exactly what that is right now, but I come bearing a lot of bad news, I guess.
I was going to say if those are the high points. Tell us the low points.
No, these are fun. I really enjoy doing the pension valuations because most are reasonably well funded. But it's rare to have a retiree health benefit program that is more than 25% funded, as opposed to the 80% that you see or 90% sometimes in pension plans. And that's because retiree health benefits were an easy benefit to give out at one time. The benefits weren't as great, health costs weren't as great, and you didn't have people retiring for a while or getting those benefits, so it was easy to promise and promise those health benefits. And unlike pensions, which were by state law, constitution, contributions were made every year from 1946 or whatever the plans came into being in the state of Michigan, with most of them right in that period, and so they've got money.
How long has MERS been managing healthcare plans?
I don't know. No, I'm not with MERS. I'm with Godwin Consulting Company.
Okay.
And I've worked with public employee plans, both these plans, retiree health and pension plans for decades, like I say, but I won't tell you how many. But that's been my whole life, my whole career. But as far as MERS,
I'm sorry.
I want to say, it could be 8 years, something like that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, when I first read this, that's what.
No, we're not MERS.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what type of return do you folks get? Because, right? I mean, this is what you're talking about.
Well, we don't manage the investments.
You
So
just do the actuarial.
we do the
Just the
actuarial, that's our
actuarial.
job, is
Okay.
to crunch the numbers.
Okay.
Their actuarial, they use the 7.5%.
Okay, got it.
And that's in line, Madam Chair, if I may speak, that's in line with our MERS program that we had presented to us. That's right along the same.
Your
lines.
pension, your
Yeah, the
pension plan.
right around the same.
They were assuming 8%.
Okay, I knew it was
Until
close.
just this year, I think.
Okay.
MERS was created by the legislature in 1945.
Right.
What's that?
MERS was created by the Michigan legislature in 1945.
Right.
And in 1996, they were made independent from the state.
Right.
And you will hear on Thursday, there is a representative from MERS who's going to come and talk about it. That's
Okay.
why on your agenda, we had the actuarial presentation for this evening. On Thursday, there'll be a presentation from MERS about their investment vehicles that are
Okay.
eligible for retiree health care.
I confused you.
That's why, yeah.
Perfect.
I appreciate the information.
Oh, good.
Not sure where to go from here with it.
Yeah.
So you presented this bad news. Are you suggesting that we do something different?
Well, I'm suggesting that I think it's important for you to know what your costs really are, what you're looking at down the road, not just this year, next year, but 5, 10 years. So I'm suggesting that some changes and assumptions should be made based on expectations of investment returns, changing perhaps the amortization period, maybe the healthcare trend, but I don't think that's too far off. But the big one is that 7.5%.
Madam Chair, I take it you work with a number of
I
municipalities
do.
around the state.
I do.
Are there case studies of what other municipalities have done to shore things up?
We're seeing, separate tiers of benefit. You're seeing sometimes plans closing to new hires. That's somewhat, I wouldn't say common, but it's just something that's, so anybody hired after, 2013 or something, doesn't get retired health benefits. That doesn't give you an immediate help, because it takes a while for those liabilities that would have emerged, to make a difference. I've seen increasing, changing the plans to have, increasing deductibles and co-pays, members contributing. In cases where they do close the plan, quite often what they'll do is establish some type of a vehicle for employee contributions and the employer to kick in. So I've seen that as well.
One other question I had is, I know you mentioned that if you use the 7.5% that you were using, as well as the 30 years, you said even if you were on plan with that and got to the 7%, and then you were going out a few years, and once you get to that spot, you said even though you're contributing that way, the state was gonna stop you from doing that and saying, okay, it's not valid anymore. Could you
Yeah, it wasn't the state, it would be the accounting standards.
Right.
So there's no law for funding, but in state law, or the state constitution.
Right, but I mean, it's gonna be in the standards, but what happens, we can still continue to do, like the 30-year amortization and 7.5% or whatever percent we can get, we can still do that, we're not prevented from doing that,
That's
even though we're not gonna make it until we, try to get
That's right.
higher amounts, right?
That's right.
I mean, they're not gonna force you to just close down policy, close down plans.
No, they can't, nobody can force you to close down your plan.
Right. But I mean, and they can't stop you from trying to make it work with 7% and 30 years amortization, right?
No, they can't stop you from
It's
doing
just-
that. It's just that the fact of the matter is it probably isn't going to
Work.
It's not gonna work,
Yeah.
so even if you get 7.5% in a 30-year AM, the AM's gonna come down technically, because we know it's way too high, but can we actually, who's gonna decide that it's not gonna work, I guess? It's just gonna be the township itself looking at the numbers, right?
Well, looking at, eventually when you have to have the projections, you'll see, especially if you use a rolling 30-year amortization,
Right.
that's where you really run into trouble. Now, at least if you reduce the 30 years to 29, 28,
Right.
you're working to actually
Gain some,
amortize.
right.
That helps, but the
And by
ones that don't.
doing that, it's gonna say, okay, you gotta contribute more, because we're
Exactly.
contributing about 600,000, and we're supposed to contribute about $1.2 million, let's say, and it's supposed to keep going up to try to hit that mark, is what we're trying to point out.
That's right.
I think the whole exercise is to try and get as close to reality as possible.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so then,
Because you don't know where you are in
So I
30
mean, we can
years.
use 30 years and 7.5%.
well, we don't wanna use 30 years then, we wanna go
Right.
back to a more realistic number,
Oh.
and what other number we can use as an interest rate, not something we can't get to.
Right.
How many municipalities use 55 as the age of retirement that you work with?
Among general employees,
Mhm.
there are quite a few that are 55 and 25, or 55 and 30 years of service would be, not uncommon.
So
For police and fire, that's, you know, it's usually,
I understand that
50
for
or-
police, but
Yeah,
for
it's my deal. I thought it was yeah.
for general employees, wouldn't it be helpful to have it later? Like 65 and,
60, there are some plans that have 60, an age 60 requirement. That's not unusual, but I'd say for general employees, to retire at 55, you typically have to have a lot of service. You know, you have to have 25 to 30 years of service.
20 years, ours are with 20 years.
Yeah,
Page 7.
that-
For general employees,
All
correct?
right,
Yeah.
so if we increase
that's-
that, how much effect will it have?
That would reduce your cost, because
Especially
you're going to
that,
have
right?
fewer
Because you got more
retirees.
people that are working longer,
That's
so.
right.
Longer contributing
So
to
is there a way to
the
do that projection? If we came back with those numbers, you would do new projections based on that?
We can change the eligibility and show the results based on a different
Yeah, because I
eligibility.
think that's what we need to see.
Yeah, good idea.
I could show you too, in the report, we show the probabilities. Something else is coming to me. Maybe we should take just a moment, if you have a moment, to look at the assumptions regarding mortality on page 9.
Okay.
It's really just, I make a statement that we use this RP 2000 table projected to 2014. There is actually a brand-new table that was out, the RP 2014 table, which has longer lifetimes in it than this particular table, which this particular table has longer lifetimes than the one you used for your last retiree health valuation. So we did recognize some of that, but this newer table has, again, even longer lifetimes built in. And you can guess, the longer the lifetimes, the more expensive it is as well. I'm satisfied with the RP 2000 projected to 2014. I think that's a reasonable assumption at this point. But let's, going over to the retirement rates on page 10. What you'll see there are the retirement ages down in the left column. And then what this means is, for example, looking in the general column at age 55. So you have somebody that meets the eligibility requirement to retire at 55. What's the chance that that person will actually retire at 55? And we're assuming 15%, which I think is pretty consistent with the MERS assumptions. I think we've tried to keep it reasonably close to what they're assuming. Because we don't know exactly how your retirements are going to play out, and probably you don't either, nobody really does, and it can be affected by a lot of things. But for example, I've worked with some plans that have made drastic changes in their retiree health benefits for people that retired before a certain date. And boy, did they have the retirements for that certain date, so that skewed things. But so we're assuming 15% would go in the first year of eligibility, and of the remaining people, 10% would go the next year, and so forth. So it's that if we were to assume that 100% of the general employees retired as soon as they got 55 and age 55 and 20 years of service, that would make the cost much higher, obviously.
Right.
That's, and then you can see the police rates.
is that a percentage too in the police?
And the same thing works for the police. And those are pretty common. I think those are exactly the MERS assumptions, or they were at some point. So about a quarter of the people at age 50 would retire. What we've seen is particularly with police and police employees, that it's not unusual to have them retiring at a faster rate than general employees. And a lot of that depends on the economy. If they can go out and get another job somewhere, they could get a nice pension, and then with their municipality and go and do something else.
So these are all percentages, just 15 is.
They're all percentages.
Right, okay, that's
All
what I
percentages.
just want to make sure.
Yeah. So,
The jump at 62 is because he gets
Social Security,
Okay.
yes, for general employees, that would, jumps them up. And then you can see the big increase at 65 as well, which is not surprising. I think we covered all the main assumptions now underlying these And when we do this actuarial valuation, it's a big project because we get data concerning every active employee and every retiree, and concerning their date of birth and sex and service credits and salary isn't so important, but and date of hire, and then we value each of those people and get the results.
Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair. So what is the typical scenario of municipalities that you work with after they look at this? Who do they sit down with and confer with to come up with a plan that?
There's a lot of that sitting down and conferring, and it
with
can
your
be,
firm or with?
we get involved in it. They also sometimes hire an insurance consultant. One of the
Right.
companies that comes out and they show you, various different ways that you can insure people, and carve-outs and, these kinds of things, the higher deductibles. And they can give some idea of the impact on premium rates when you do that. But I found that it's, the administration usually, and together with employee reps quite often, or union reps, to try to bring everybody into the discussion that, hey, we've got a situation here that is not sustainable, and what do we do about it with the least amount of upheaval for everybody.
Okay.
Anyone else?
So how much more would it cost to actually run another one with instead of 30 years, maybe a lower year, and then changing the year that they retire instead of at 55?
Those will cost like $800 a piece.
Actuarial.
Yeah, the actuarial fee.
Because like what Scott was saying, if we can get to a more realistic number, at least we can look at it and put the numbers in and say, okay, this is what we're looking at here, but truly we need to look at this number. I guess we can discuss it internally, but so about $800 to make, if we give you
Yeah, if you tell us what.
another set of numbers to
Yeah.
rerun.
Yes.
But starting today, though, I mean, using a 30 year is not unreasonable, correct? I mean, if the standard's coming into effect.
Yeah, it's no more unreasonable than having a 30-year mortgage on your house.
Right.
And if you can, you feel that you can, there's risks associated with that. It lasts long enough, yeah.
Right.
And
But the retirement at 55
Yeah.
is something we have to look at, not necessarily the 30 years, but the 55 retirement, because most public sectors, most people don't retire at 55, so that's what's causing part of this debt, right?
to the extent the earlier they retire,
Right.
yes, the
Right, the longer
more
you gotta pay for the benefits.
more expensive it
Do you
is.
see that very many places, people retiring, not police, because I
General
understand them retire
employees?
early.
Retiring 55?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Is that the standard? I mean, 55, is that the benchmark that you see, or?
55 with a lot of service, I say, 30 years of service. Usually that's not unusual. I wouldn't say it's everyone. It's very common also to have 60 as the age.
That has been more our pattern for other than police. It's been between 60 and 65.
Yeah, these ages have just come down over the years through collective bargaining. It used to be, when I first started working, it was general employees to retire at 65, maybe 62 with reduced benefits, and public safety would be 55.
I think we need to look at our options.
Right, yeah, we gotta discuss the options and then maybe do it. And maybe we don't have to do it because it's gonna cost $800, but it would give us a better picture of how much we're behind. Because right now, we're at least 600,000 a year behind.
Do we do this study annually or every couple of years? Or,
Our last one was in 2012.
It's 3 years. It's when you're under 200 participants, I believe it is, it's every 3 years that you have to do it. And I don't know if the new standards have changed that or not. I think it made it the same for everybody, and it might be 2 years for everybody or something.
Any other questions? Comments?
sum it up, if you had to give a suggestion, it's what?
Well, one thing we need to do is to see what the results will be based on if a lower rate of investment return. We need to do that. And then I think you internally need to, look at your options with respect to retirement eligibility conditions, the benefits that you provide to retirees. Do you want to keep providing them to new hires?
Does anybody keep it like at 55, they can leave and freeze their retirement but not collect till they're 65?
Yes, there's vesting, for health benefits or pensions?
Or anything, but.
Certainly for pensions, it's very common, there's a vesting period, maybe 10 years, and no matter when you quit, you could be 40 years old, if you've got 10 years of service, you can come back when you reach the eligibility age of 65 or whatever it is, and start to collect your pension.
Does anybody do that with
Frozen.
the health benefit? They probably don't, because they probably need them then.
That can be a very costly,
Yeah.
I know one city years ago that had a very large female workforce. And at that time in particular, women didn't work that long, but they had a 5-year vesting, that's what it was, in the pension plan, which translated to their retirement benefit. So these people could work 5 years, between age 25 and 30, and come back when they're at 60 and get a pension. And the pension wasn't worth squat because it was based on a pay that was, 40 years ago. But the pension, the health benefits that the city was providing were based on whatever the health benefits were at that time. So it was a fully escalated benefit. Well, but it shows you the kind of things, traps that you can get into. Nobody thought about this. And most plans now have pretty stringent requirements with respect to having a deferred pension and then retiring with a deferred pension and being eligible for health benefits. Some say, no, if you don't retire directly from the municipality, you don't get health benefits. And I'm seeing a trend in that direction. Unless, I suppose if you have maybe a lot of service, but to avoid that situation I just described.
Okay.
I hate to do this, but I have another question now. So you were saying that you put in all the names or the dates and everything, everybody's gender and all that. Why wouldn't you guys use our investment rate versus an assumed one? Is there a reason?
We use this. I use the 7.5%, thinking that you were, or based on the assumption that you would be making the contributions as recommended, and also that you would be investing this money in something other than CDs. And 7.5% used to be a very reasonable rate for a 60% equity, 40% bonds type of typical portfolio. Now I'm hearing investment people say, it's more like 6.5, 7, something like that. So we have to make an assumption because we're projecting out liabilities, 100 years and.
Okay, so that's why you don't use ours, you're just using what you think is the standard in the industry, is that?
Well, and relative to what your investments are. So if you have a very conservative, and you're extremely conservative with your investments now, I believe you're in CDs and that, so that's very conservative. But the less risk you take, probably the less return you're going to get. And so for every retirement system that we work with, we do look at what their we have discussions with what are your investment goals, and if the investment advisors can provide that, it's helpful.
I guess, so they do use this 7.5% across the board, correct?
Sounds good.
It's a very common assumption.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very common assumption. 8% used to be a very common assumption, and that's the thing of the past. But 7.5%, and that's true with pension plans too. And you probably read a lot now about pension plans and how many of them, like MERS, were at 8%. And they've been ratcheting down now, and it's painful. As you'll see when you see this result based on a lower rate. And for public employee pension plans, which are bound by state law to contribute, that makes it's a big problem. And you've been reading about it with, obviously Detroit. They had to reduce their assumed rate, and it caused a big increase in their costs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed the questions
Clarified
and
a lot of
discussion.
things.
Yeah, thanks for
So,
coming.
well, if anything else arises, we'd be happy to try to respond and help you out. Thank you very much. Pleasure working with you.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Now, we'll move on to the agenda for Thursday night, go over that. And so, moving down to we will have a public hearing on the CDBG funds, because they wouldn't allow one of the things that we put in for the paving of the senior center parking lot. And so we have had to switch that, which was in your packet, to this sidewalk and step there in front of the senior center, which has some inches of that people could stumble over, and causes problems. So we decided to do that and make the adjustment. So as soon as everything else is in with the county except for this. So once we take this under consideration and vote it in, then our deal for CDBG funds for the next 3 years will be in for our grant. Are there any questions on that?
And we do have, I know we listed certain ones, but we do have way beyond what we need in that we've given them, so that if something else pops out later, we have other replacements ones, right?
It's about $3,000, not a whole lot, no.
No, I'm talking about if something else. 'Cause
Oh, yeah.
last year, we had some items that changed, but this
Yeah.
way we put extra items in
That's right.
as a buffer, so if something changes, it doesn't play out properly.
That's
Like
right.
when we were gonna have so many demolitions and we didn't
Mhm.
have them,
Yeah.
we got backup that we can use it somewhere else, so we
That's
will
correct.
use all the
Mhm.
grant funds, right?
That's right. No, we're not going to give anything back. I mean, we've got a guarantee that it will.
Right, yeah, we've got extra surplus
That
here,
we
so
won't
that's
be
good.
giving anything back. All right, approval for the minutes for December 10th, 8th, 10th, and December 15th. I was supposed to put in all the names and dates of service of the planning commission and the zoning, the planning commission, but I am including the zoning board of appeals members so that we have an accurate member. They must be recorded in the minutes. We didn't do that, so I'm asking to amend the minutes for the November 12th. November 12th minutes.
Do you have those names?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'll add
Well, I have a question on the December 10th
Yes.
proposed meeting minutes. I was not here. It's my understanding it was on the agenda and it was discussed about the ballot language for the request for the parks for funding ballot language for the bicentennial park. And other than a quick blip in public comment, there is no mention in the minutes anywhere that was discussed at all or voted on.
It wasn't voted on.
It wasn't voted on.
Was it even discussed? I know
Yeah.
our Parks and Rec
It
director was here, and I know we talked about
discussed,
it.
but it wasn't voted on.
Would that not be recorded in the minutes?
I didn't think it should be, should it, David?
Well, we didn't, it was
We
an
didn't
agenda
take
item,
any-
Right.
right?
Agenda item.
But we didn't
Yeah.
take any action on it.
No.
So what we did, and what we did talk about, as I recall, is we're gonna revisit this topic in, it was either 60 or 90 days.
Mhm.
And so we kind of postponed our
So wouldn't
discussion.
shouldn't that be in the minutes, so that way we won't forget it?
Well, you certainly can amend it if you want and add that comment, if you all remember it that way. That's how I remembered it, that we sort of just.
I remembered we were just not doing anything with
decided
it
to
that we
discuss it in
didn't
the
vote on.
future because we had different options for upcoming elections. And so if you want to note that in your minutes, you're certainly free to amend them and include that.
And I would be I'm willing to do it, but what do you want me to actually say, that we are waiting till a future date?
Well, again, my general recollection, and you were all there too, with the exception of Larry, was that we wanted to explore different options and different potential dates for reconsideration of putting it on a ballot. I didn't say that very well, but the idea was that we had planned to discuss it for each of the upcoming ballot opportunities.
Okay.
And that was my impression.
After March. The ballot occurs after
Yeah,
March.
yeah, because we had to act. I mean, I think we had to act in December to get out of
Yeah.
March, so we pushed it down at least to the next 2 cycles.
And that was my recollection also.
So,
Again, I wasn't here, I just knew it was an agenda item and that
Mhm.
it was,
We spent a lot of time discussing it.
yeah.
not talked about.
We didn't vote about it.
Chris, I'll get with you and we'll propose some language for those minutes that
Okay.
you can look at on the 10th. Or for the 10th, you can look at it Thursday night. Does that
Right.
sound reasonable?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Chair, I
Yes.
just had a comment with regard to those commissions, not that I want to get into full-blown discussion on it, but I'm not sure how much recognition we give to the people that serve on planning and ZBA and what have you, but even if it was some type of certificate or something like this, of recognition, just to recognize them for their time. I know, some of those pay a little bit of stipend or whatever, but the amount of time and professionalism that we have involved on those commissions, I think.
Well, I would be happy to give a certificate, okay?
Right.
Since we are not allowed under law to take any township money to pay for any recognition.
Sure.
So if we give anybody, it has to be
Yeah,
money from
certificate.
individuals or
Okay.
the board or, members of the board or whatever.
Yeah.
So as I say, it would have to be a certificate,
Okay.
and I would be very happy to
Okay.
do that.
I'll talk to you about that.
So we go from private business with a gold watch to a paper certificate for public.
Sure.
service.
Private business is a paper certificate nowadays too, trust me.
If nothing else, it might be a photo and a picture in the Grand Blanc view.
Yeah. Okay, then we have the treasurer's reports and then the presentation. Do you want to explain the presentation, Dennis?
Sure. It kind of worked out in our favor. We were going to have her in December, and we pushed it back due to the number of agenda items we had. But now that we got the actuarial study back, this kind of ties in because she's going to come in to represent one funding vehicle option for that OPEB dollars that you all just saw the actuarial study on. I don't know how long it will take, probably a good question for Sandy. She's just going to rerun the numbers with a lower investment return rate so that we can see much more actually what that looks like. But just going to lead us to, we're going to have to take a multi-pronged approach on how we're going to attack this thing. And part of it is, what the board can consider their investment strategy and try to be more aggressive and try to get a greater return on their investment. And then we'll have to consider the other options as we move into contract negotiations later in the year. But you're not going to be asked to sign up with MERS or to move the funds in there on Thursday. It's really just so that we can explore that option, so that the board has the opportunity to look at, here's one investment vehicle if you were to decide to go in that direction.
Okay.
Just a comment, I appreciate, Dennis, that you're forward thinking on this.
Thanks.
All right. Then the next, the board will consider adopting a resolution for a charitable gaming license for one-time raffle sponsored by the Roosevelt Harlenites Incorporated for the purpose of providing college scholarships for students. Is this going to be on the day of their golf?
This is Mr. Williams.
Oh, okay, thank you.
This is Mr. Williams, and he is putting this on.
First of all, thank you very much for entertaining
this thought to help us out. The reason why I'm here, quite frankly, is because the state requires that we
Right.
present to the local community our desire to try to increase our funds in this manner. To give you just a brief history of the organization, we've been organized for quite a number of years. We dissolved our segregated schools in '64. And since then, we've been gathering together every year to celebrate our heritage. And the scholarship was born out of that, and we have been giving kids money every year for quite some number of years. And I've been organizing a golf outing here in our fine community for the last 7 years and upcoming 8 years to raise money for that purpose. And we've been very successful. If you look at the flyer that you have there, we raised over $31,000. And that's just, that's the kind of money that we give out. We haven't raised that much money here, but we have given that much money out to the kids over that period of time, and much more than that over our lifetime. So the state requires, again, for us to show our certification as a nonprofit, and we have those documents. I've been the president for the last 7 years. We have a board that have been in place for the whole period of time that our organization has been incorporated. We've incorporated in Kentucky. And we're as legitimate as any other 501c3, and we're willing to, and we're able to be scrutinized by the state, and the state's mandate we have already satisfied and would satisfy if there are any other things that they would require. And you're accepting us being here and being a legitimate charitable organization, doing the kind of work in which we've shown to be doing. And the state requires that you, I guess, legitimize me and our organization for being what we are. And what we are proposing is to have a $1,000 raffle, and we would do that nationwide. And we would present the winner, or we would have the drawing at our golf outing in August. And so the state requires also that we have our drawing locally. And so we're going to satisfy all of their requirements, okay, each and every one that they present. And I wouldn't bore you with the list of things that they do. They have bank statements, our bylaws, and me being a bona fide member, and I'm a lifetime member and have been a member for the last period of time. In fact, I graduated in '67, for an example, and my wife and I have been members ever since. Of course, the organization has been in existence. So I'm here, and I'm asking for your support, and would be willing to answer any questions that you might have regarding this application. Yes.
Yeah, I don't have any problem. I'm just curious the name. Where does that come from?
I appreciate it very much. And just briefly, which I'm very proud of, is that Julius Rosenwald was a philanthropist. He and Booker T. Washington came together in the 19 teens, okay, in the 1920s and the 30s. And they found that there weren't any mechanisms at all to educate black kids in the South. There might have been modest ones in the North, but there weren't any requirements for the local communities and the
Board of Education to educate black folks. And so they took it upon themselves to form a system to engage the community, and he would add to those funds that the community raised to build schools for those young black people. And they built over 5,000 schools in the South, throughout the South, to educate our folk. And we happened to be one of them. And we were named after Mr. Roosevelt. And they've done a nice documentary about his life and about his philanthropist efforts. And it's being presented here in Michigan, and my wife and I are going to attend next month. So we're real excited about what they're doing as far as lifting up his effort for us. And I'm trying to do my little part, quite frankly, to respect his legacy, right, frankly, and his and Liberty Washington for what they did for us. So that's what we do.
I appreciate that. As a former teacher, I'm all for college scholarships, okay?
Yeah.
My only question through you to Mr. Laddie would be, are there a limit to the numbers of these that the municipality can approve? I mean, we're not disenfranchising somebody else.
No, we get these, and Chris, jump in if I misstate something, but we get these, they're generated by the state of Michigan, and they come to us, and there's a resolution that is on a form that requires us to approve it. And I don't know what the criteria is for the state of Michigan, for the state to decide who can have these and when. We get maybe 2 or 3 of these a year at the most, maybe not even that. But we've never really tried to make any determination about who's having them and when and why. We just, when the resolutions come to us via the state, we just consider them on an individual basis.
So if they're approved at the state level,
Yeah.
we're just the final approval?
Yeah, unlike the liquor licenses, I'm not aware of any quota that we have.
That's what I'd ask. And I agree, it's a great cause, and I'm in total agreement with the thing. I just wanted to know that answer.
Yeah, good
Well,
question.
thank you for the history lesson.
My pleasure.
Thank
and,
you.
And thank you so much for your
I
consideration.
have a
appreciate
question
it.
for your name. His first name is Alaska, which I think is so cool, but you go by Les.
Yes.
Why? Why not take that wonderful name that nobody else in the world
Isn't
has?
that something? Well, they didn't have a lot of regard for it when I was born. In fact, they gave me a full nickname was Lester. So I didn't even know my name until I went to school. My family still doesn't call me Alaska. But you know what? The nice thing is that I have a grandson, and his name is Alaska, and they call him Alaska from the time he was born, and he's big time. He's big time Alaska. So he's wording it a little bit differently than I.
Thank you for the
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much for your time.
Moving on, the next one, accepting the resignation of Sue Saylor from the Employee Pension Advisory Fund. Do we have somebody that filled that?
Yeah, the next one.
Oh, is that Sue? Okay, very good, okay. The board, sorry, I didn't look down. The board shall consider appointing Matt Kimmer to the Employee Pension Advisory Committee as a full-time member and Yvonne Wagner as an alternate member. So those are pretty much among the employees, so they have done that. And there also, if there's any questions, the board shall consider accepting the resignation of police officer Ryan Leach effective December 19th, 2015, and I think that he is seeking other employment. The board shall consider approving the purchase of police body cameras from Digital Ally of Lenexa, Kansas for $52,709. Now, that's not just the cameras, that's the cameras, as you say, 35 body cameras, 18 ViewLink kits, 3 charging stations, 1 Dell server, 10 TB, and the ViewVault software DVD from Digital Ally. This money will be allocated from the Capital Projects Fund 497, 100, 975, 303. This will allow all 34 uniformed officers, I assume that's patrol officers, including captain, no, it's including the captains and sergeants, to be issued a body camera. Okay. Yeah, would you come up, Chief, so people can ask you questions?
Certainly. Is everything gonna be stored on that server? Is that why the server's in there?
Yeah, the servers are 10 terabyte
Mhm.
server. We wanted to keep it separate from the video
Mhm.
system.
That's good.
Because we don't want to corrupt each other. And
Mhm.
if we have problems, we don't want mobile vision pointing fingers at Digital Alley and vice versa. And also, if we have questions, I have Captain Ron Wiles here with me, Scott Thiede, and Officer Joshua Bellinger, who has the Digital Alley on him. And I also brought, you have the provision somewhere? So the other two we had to send back because they were on only for demonstration purposes over the last year.
Is that where they
we sent
were,
them-
Dave, way up there?
Yeah, we can, come on up, Josh,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, and you can show the board and the public, please, kind of what they look like. This is the Digital Alley. Josh has been our test person along with Officer Beakey. They've been wearing them off and on for the last year, trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
Would you kind of turn around?
This is
Oh, I thought-
this is the camera here that
Yeah.
you can, it's on a clip.
Mhm.
You can move it around here. From the best place that we found it, without wearing a coat, is to clip it on your pocket here. So it's
How easy are they to turn on and off?
Is that the audio? Yeah.
yes, there's a battery pack that's on a cord.
Okay.
This unit here, every unit's different, but this unit has a cord that goes from the camera and the audio is here. The cord goes through and then in our bodyproof vest, there's a strap and there's a battery pack that's right here. So that's the only thing visible on this unit is the camera and the audio part here.
Okay, can you let her see that?
Got it.
Yeah.
And how long have you been wearing it?
This particular unit I've been wearing probably maybe a month or so.
Is it easy to get used to?
Yeah, out of all the models that we've tested, this is the model that's easiest to wear and actually to perform our duties. Because as you can see, this is one of the other units that we were testing, and as you can see, it's quite a bit larger. But this unit, the batteries inside of it, the camera, the audio, everything, this unit is separate with the cord. So with this one, we were wearing it up on our lapel here, which it's very visible, and also the angle of it, no matter where you put it, like especially me because I have no shoulders, it points directly up to the ceiling, so you can't
Probably
really.
gets a lot of your face.
Right,
too.
and not yet, exactly.
Not much good at ceilings aren't much good as.
No, it doesn't catch much.
I can pass it around.
So those are audio as well as video?
Yeah, so all of them are. This particular model, this is the one that they're proposing. This one
So go ahead and pass it around.
works directly with their in-camera in our cars. Though that model does not, but this one does.
So it records on the vehicle?
Right, if I'm in my patrol car driving around, if I activate my lights or siren, the car automatically turns this on. So I don't have to do it
In
manually.
addition to the,
In addition to the camera in the car. And also with this model, this feature, say another officer, 3-4 officers come on scene to back me up or on a call or whatnot. If my vehicle's activated, their cameras are automatically turned on just by being in a certain area around my vehicle. And then also there's if I'm away from my car, I can turn it on manually. There's a button on the side, and you can turn it on and
How
off.
far does that see? How far does it capture good?
Myself, I haven't viewed the actual footage, but Captain Wiles has watched the video footage regarding the quality and stuff like that.
I'm curious about that.
Yeah, the video quality, really, we narrowed down to 2 units, this one and the TASER unit, and the video quality on both those were superior to the others. I could be standing at the back of the room, pointing the camera at you guys, and we'd have no problem telling who's who. We
Wow.
could probably, through the software that's attached to it, zoom in on your nameplates and see names in front of you from that far away.
That's awesome.
low light conditions, it's.
Low light's a little different. It's similar to the eye. The darker it gets, the more difficult it is to get good video with the camera.
That was
What
one
audio?
thing, plus with the Pro Vision, is that it had night vision in there. You'll see one of the lenses on there, it's a night vision camera.
That'd be really heavy to carry around.
And just a procedural question, when are you requiring them to turn it on?
Well, the policy we have, all citizens have it. But that's to be determined, and once we get it out in the field, if everybody touch and feel it and use it, taking into consideration compliance with FOIA statutes and records retention statutes.
If you turn your lights on and it automatically goes on, and then you turn it off to go talk to somebody in their house, does it automatically turn off once you turn your car off?
No, this unit, if my car activates it, but my car does not turn it off.
Oh.
So if I'm in my car, turn on my lights off, and I exit my vehicle, go into somebody's house, this will just stay on. And like she said, with our policy, if we were going to be talking to someone in their house, this would be on.
So you'd have to physically turn it off when you got back to your
Correct.
vehicle, or when you were done with the,
Correct.
with the contract.
Yes.
So Dave, just out of curiosity, would this cover, if you do a liquor inspection, would the policy require that they turn it on?
Yes, citizen contact.
So any citizen contact.
Yes, except for things where there's an expectation of privacy, like locker rooms.
No, yeah, but if you go into 7-Eleven for a cup of coffee, but there's no 7-Elevens anymore. But if you went into for a cup of coffee someplace, would you turn that on? Would that be required to turn on?
There's a sample policy put out by the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
Thank
Kind of
you.
gives you some idea of the policy.
I've got a question with regard to
Oops, I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah,
There's
you-
two, there's two.
Oh, there's two, I'm
to
sorry.
FOIA requests, and also just, I know you have 10 terabyte digital storage, but I'm just wondering in terms of management of that data, because one of the things that I've read about anyways is that, the cost of the cameras is one thing, it's the management of the data that leads to a whole other series of issues, as far as FOIA requests and the time that it takes to edit the video, because you're not necessarily going to want to give me the entire video of my arrest or whatever. You're going to want to give me, a small section or what have you. I don't, are you going to have somebody that handles all the type of thing?
Yeah, currently, Chief's Assistant Sherry Potter does all the FOIA and redaction of that stuff. One of the benefits of the software for the Digital Ally and the TASER, they were by far the best two user-friendly, besides the best working cameras. The ability to search that video and narrow down time as far as what you're looking for. Like, for instance, I could search Officer Bellinger on a certain date, and it would give me those videos from that date, instead of having to go through 35 cameras all manually looking for a specific one. There was only one company that had any redaction software in their software, and that was TASER. It was very cumbersome to use, though. It was, in my opinion, not very well thought out. Chris Moore, who was the rep here, who has been outstanding in his customer service to us, says they are coming up with an updated software for Digital Ally, which will have redaction software included. Until then, we'd have to use an outside vendor, though, for redaction purposes.
We have to, with TASER, it's proprietary, and their stuff is stored in the cloud as opposed to on the server. We thought the server was the best way to go from us, once we control cost and the use of it. I'm concerned about using a third party, such as a cloud for video and certain other things because of cost, access, etc. With respect to Digital Ally or even our in-car video currently, we'll have to buy at least two different types of software for redaction. You'll have Camtasia, and there's 2 or 3 other ones. Some will blur out. If I have a traffic stop and there's an undercover officer there, I have to blur out that face. I have to blur out the license plate. I have to redact out a juvenile, for example, if there's a juvenile there. If there's any lean traffic, when we do the wants and warrants and all that stuff, we have to redact that too. So it is very labor intensive. That includes our in-car video systems. And we also have to comply with the FOIA requirements and what we charge for those, because the statute changed, I believe, July 1st of last year. So we're on the cutting edge, if you will, of certain things, but at the same time, we did our due diligence, we took our time evaluating the systems and trying to work within the limitations of the law of the FOIA and the records retention schedule, which is Schedule 11 of the state records retention schedule. Yes, sir.
I just want to say, I know, at least we've talked about this for approximately a year now, and you and your minister staff have been working on it. I've had some resident contact, saying, why aren't we doing this? We should have this now, we need this now, we need this now. And I appreciate the time and effort you guys put into this, because I like knowing that we're making the right decision, and everything I've read on your presentation so far is, I'm sold on this system. You guys did a good job. Thank you.
The documents I gave you, the first one was our proposed policy. The way that our policies and procedures, the police department is driven by policy and procedure. Everything that we pretty much do has a policy and procedure and within regulation. And the policy, normally what happens is we have a proposed policy, we give it out to the union has 2 weeks to review and input, bring it back to us. If we want to make those input and changes, we will. About 99.9% of the time, they do not give it back to us for input. But that's part of the contract, and that's what we do. Then we adopt the policy. You'll notice on those policies, there's no policy number in the upper right-hand corner. And the reason for that, it's just a draft proposal at this point in time. We don't have the technology yet, so we're not going to adopt it. Once we get to that point, we'll go ahead and go through that process.
Well, it would be easier to, after you've used it for a while, to see how, a practical policy, how it actually.
Yeah, and this policy, the other document I gave you is from the CLEAR Committee, which, the CLEAR Committee was established by Governor Snyder. It's representatives of the law enforcement community throughout the state. It's a kind of a closed group meeting, it's not open to the public, and they did a report on it, and the recommendations that they came out with back in September have been incorporated in the policy from the IACP. There's also another one from PERF, Police Executive Research Forum. They're all pretty consistent.
Dave, I have a couple questions. One is, I hope this commission works a lot better than he did Waterford and Flint. But second, that was a little editorial. Does this kind of work like the old, like our videotape system that we used to have, where we kept the tapes for 30 days? So the question is how long are we going to keep these?
Underneath the records retention schedule of the state of Michigan, it's created plus 1. So any digital video has to be kept from the date it was created plus 1 year. My position is that I like to keep things 3 years. The reason for that is, it exceeds some of the statute of limitations. For example, on a civil rights complaint, those are 6 months. For a civil suit, it's 3 years. So it's our opinion that we would like to extend that out. The minimum is 1 year.
So are you, and I just perused this real quick.
And they're downloaded, as you well know, on the
Right.
L3 system. They're downloaded onto a disk once it reaches a certain.
So the procedure on that is when I come off my shift, I go over there and then download it immediately?
Well, part of the system that we like with Digital Alley is the charging station is also a transfer station. Meaning when you put the body cam, when Josh gets done with his shift, he'll put it into the charging station.
Right.
It will transfer that video or those images into the server.
And automatic.
Yeah, so it's, I don't want to say dummy proof, but it's,
Right.
even I can do it. So,
A lot can be charged at one time, several at one time.
yes, is what I did is, because each bank, I believe, has 12, so that would give us enough for everyone that has one malfunctions. Then we have another, technically another bank to use. In the case of Josh's, if his goes down during his shift or runs on a battery charge or whatever, he can take that, put it back into the bank, grab another one, or grab the spare, which we should have. But we like to keep one body camera per person. It's a lot easier to manage. The accountability is there. The extended life of the equipment is prolonged because you're much more apt to take care of your own stuff, and things won't get damaged. You won't blame it on somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's much easier.
So I turn it in every shift. Every shift I need to charge it. So I leave that at the station. When I come back, that's the first thing I do is gotta pick it back
Yeah,
up.
pick it up just like they do on any of their other pieces of equipment, their
Right.
tasers or flashlights, radios, whatever they have. That's the way we do it.
I have a question.
Yes.
And I don't know if you can answer this tonight or you can get back to us for Thursday. I've been, I guess I want to use the word surprised by this before, and I want to prepare for it this time. The View Vault software that comes with it. How good is the software licensing for, and what is the charge going to be to re-up that licensing so we can plan for that in our budget? Because
Yeah, the service 3 year, the licensing, I'm not sure on. I can check on that. Normally, the licensing fees are about every year, like
about every year is what I've seen, sometimes 2
about
years.
$3,000 roughly.
I've seen some longer than that.
Yeah,
So-
so for us on a video.
Okay. I guess I'd just like to know, again, I'm not against it at all, and I just want to make
No, I
sure that
understand.
we are planning for that going down the road.
Yeah, and we can put that in our budget. I think you've seen my budget sheets that I use. I have
Again, I'd just like to know
line
what
item, and then when it comes up, I put it into the budget next year.
what to expect, so, again, I think it's a good system.
Yeah, it's,
Clark?
Just a comment, I echo Larry's comments that I've heard a lot of wonder from the public, if you will, why haven't you done this? Well, what's the delay? I think it's the right thing to do for the citizenry as well as our law enforcement agency in this community. And to kind of maybe rest some of these, and Chief touched on it a little bit. You know, it's not like this is the first time we've been in the field of a video source, right? We do have the dash cams today. We're just taking it to that next level. It's on the officer, right? So we've handled this already in one form, right? This is just a little bit more extensive form. So a little more downloading, a little more from the FOIA standpoint that the concerns here. But again, it's been thought out.
and with accountability, public trust, to disprove, approve claims
Yes.
of police misconduct. I believe just since, I want to say just before the holidays, I've reviewed 4 use of force complaints. In other words, we used force on at least 4 incidents. Just so you have an idea of what we do,
Yeah.
is every time we have a use of force, even if I put my hand on Ron and have to arrest him and cuff him, technically they're supposed to be doing a use of force report.
Yeah.
So we check out the form, and then every day they submit a report back to us, so we know how many we've had, what types of force we've used, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we also review those, to make sure that they conform to our policy and procedure. That's how we've operated, that's how we've always done business.
Well, that's it. I mean, you know, it seems like a high cost at first for all of these, but one alleged suit against us can easily cost us.
Yeah. And I think Josh will verify, because Josh was the brunt of one citizen's complaint, which could have been quite contentious for the police department, involving a person of color. Once we reviewed the cameras, thank God the other officer that came and assisted Josh turned his camera on as well. So they both ended up capturing the incident.
Yeah.
And when the media came in to question us about that, I had no qualms
Yeah, no.
about taking a video, showing the media about what occurred.
And that was caught on our in-car camera at that time. We were
How
working about
close
it.
can a person get to you before they can't be seen?
Like I said, Captain Wells probably attested that by watching the video, but
Yeah.
you mean if someone like
Yeah,
us
somebody's
interviewing
up there to
this
hit you or
Yeah.
something.
Right, if he's talking to me here, you can see my probably mid-chest up.
You can see, he
Oh,
can see
yeah,
your face?
for sure.
Yeah, it depends on, I mean, obviously tall, height of the other officer wearing it, but
It'll be
I would say
different.
probably 4 or 5 feet above and below the camera, it was probably
That's
this
great.
Pretty wide angle.
Yeah. But, yeah,
How many throughout the county, how many agencies?
the only one I know of that's using them on a regular basis that's mandated is the University of Michigan Point.
Well, I want to say,
State police have been testing.
Testing them, just like we.
I want to say, I'm glad that Grand Blanc is going to lead the way again. This is part of the whole professional police department that we've operated, and I'm very happy about that. And I think 53,000 or 54,000 is nothing compared to the public, putting the public at ease, and most of our police officers, probably 99%, point something, are good folks, and they do the job right. Now, occasionally, and we know we've had a couple that,
We're human.
right, and it would catch that type of behavior. But this is going to help Josh do his job, and it's going to help the detectives and the prosecution. This is a drop in the bucket and a good deal.
And there are limitations with video too. We have to remember when we review video for certain complaints, that when the officer is engaged in a certain incident, he's gonna see what he sees television. The camera's gonna pick up the scope of everything. So when you see certain videos in the media or wherever else, they're gonna say, how come you didn't see this over here or this over here? It's because when you're in those high-stress incidents, you have television, and you're only gonna pick up certain things. So when we review videotapes and other mechanisms or media, we have to be very, very careful at when we judge what is seen or shown in public. We have to be very cautious of it.
But here's
I was
subjective.
surprised.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I was surprised by the cost too. I expected it to be much higher, but I think the cost of memory is is fairly inexpensive, so 3 years, I think, certainly willing to do that, if not more. If I'm
Serve
not-
a 3-year warranty too, if I didn't say.
Okay, good. If I'm an officer and I come in with my camera, do I download it myself, or do I hand it to somebody and they download it, or?
No, it's downloaded in, and if Ron can explain how that software works and the review process.
So the officer will come in off his shift. He'll take the camera off his uniform and put it in the charging bank. There's one cord that hooks into the side of the unit that transfers the video or pictures or whatever, audio, whatever's on there.
Your entire unit.
You'll see on the side of that, there's a little outlet where a cord for a computer can go into. That's the charging docket where it plugs into. Through the software, the officer will have the ability to go in and view that video. So when he's writing reports or before court, if he wants to refresh his memory, he can go in there and view that video. The way the permissions are set up, you can't alter it, you can't edit it, you can't delete it. Only people with those permissions can do that. You'll only have strictly viewing and viewing of his video only.
How durable is this?
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask.
The camera?
Right, because if something happens and it gets broke in a scuffle.
Yeah, that's why we ordered spares, things are gonna happen. If something has a defect with that, it's probably gonna be that hardwire. And we'll have to get some extra hardwires.
I was recently I was in a semi-forcible arrest wearing that actual camera. Had it on my coat, and we rolled around on the ground with a couple times, and at that time it never came unplugged, it didn't break, it didn't unattach from my uniform at all. So in that incident, I mean, not to say it would never.
Durable looking case.
Yeah.
One of the things that we like about Digital Ally is we're always looking to improve on the product. The cord that goes from the battery storage to the camera, that is a second generation cord. It's been upgraded since the first one. When we spoke to Chris Moore a couple weeks ago, they are getting ready to put out their third generation cord to make it even more durable.
Will that be assigned to the same person each day of service?
So then,
And everybody did their
What if
own.
I don't download it when I come in?
That's supervisory issue, and we'll deal with it inside.
what sort of, have you thought about if people take the camera off to commit a crime, what are you gonna do?
We're hoping not.
Not a
Officer?
crime, but yeah. But if an
If there's a
officer,
violation of the policy, is what happens. I'll use our in-car camera, for example. Sergeants are responsible on a monthly basis to go back through and review video, just to see if we're conforming to our policies. In one case, just recently, actually two in recent memory, we found that the officers weren't doing their pre-checks properly. That was addressed through training and other mechanisms. We had another officer driving too fast, that was addressed. And then the other officer also had some issues with logging his contacts properly, and that was addressed. So part of the problem, or what we have to make sure that we do is have solid policies and procedures, which we do, and to make sure that we have checks and balances in the system, to make sure that the officers and staff and everyone else is conforming or complying with our policies.
I guess I was just wondering, like, can somebody turn it off for a couple hours?
They can, but if they get
and-
caught, shame on them.
If they get caught, but they'd
But
have
that,
to.
you'll see in the draft policy up there, there's two sections that kind of address that. One, the supervisors are going to be required monthly to do reviews of video, random reviews of video.
Okay.
Secondly, there's a section in there that talks about, should the officer be on an event that should be recorded and it is not? They're responsible for documenting that through an incident report, why wasn't that camera on?
Okay. What does this mean in here? I don't understand this part. It can only be used in conjunction with official law enforcement duties. The BWC shall not generally be used to record communications with other police personnel without the permission of the chief of police.
For example, if we're doing a pre-draw of a raid, a drug raid, we don't want them recording what we're planning on doing and then getting that out there, or surreptitiously recording my conversation with an employee and then trying to use that information for hearing later on.
Right, but
Something to the media.
if Joshua's out on the road with another cop and their things are turned on, they're fine talking to each other without your permission. Okay.
All
I think it's a surreptitious taping is that the big deal.
We have a policy on that anyways, so if I'm having a meeting with somebody and they have a tape recorder and they don't disclose it by our policy and procedure, then.
Well, I'm really impressed with them. I'd like one
So,
myself.
once they, how long is it in his recorder? I mean, he comes back, he puts it in the charger and downloads it. So is his screen cleaned out completely? Because I know he uses it for reports later, but he has to do that while he's downloading it, I guess, right?
Yeah, the time to download is minimal. They filled that up, and I was the one downloading during the testing procedure. The whole thing downloaded within maybe 5 minutes tops.
So
So
does
that's
that
for a
clean-
full camera.
Right, so that cleans his machine out completely.
Yep, so
Right,
then
so
you
every
can-
day he's got a blank file, right? In his
As
camera.
long as the transfer is successful.
Well, as long as it went through properly, right?
How long-
So if he's gonna use it to do his reports, he's gonna do that before he downloads it completely, right? Because you said he can't use it to verify
And
well.
once it's transferred to the server,
Right.
there's the software program, you can log on there.
Okay, he's just gonna
Permissions
pull off
as
his
given
computer.
in
Okay,
his
good.
video.
Yeah, we'll pull it up.
On this unit itself, on this particular one, you can't watch the video within
Right.
itself without putting it on a server, like
Right.
Captain said.
So that
How
way
many
you can
hours
get
will
back
it
to
go?
your information, but
30
every
hours?
day it should be completely cleared and you're
Right,
starting.
you'd have a
over.
full memory
Working,
for.
Right now,
double shift
recording.
or something.
Yeah, right now we're having an issue with this camera, meaning we just noticed yesterday that we have 45 minutes, if it was running continuously, 45 minutes, which I know is more than 45 minutes, it's got to be several hours, which I recall, Ron has a call placed actually, Chris Moore, trying to figure out what went wrong with it, so we either have a defective software or something with the system. But that's the purpose of having extra body cams for spares, and being available to put it back in there, write it up, get it repaired, and take it all out.
There's a
Any-
3-year warranty.
I'm sorry?
There's a 3-year warranty on the side, so.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have enough extras.
Any other issue too is we can buy, as far as the charging is concerned, we can buy extra long life batteries if we need it.
Can you get portable chargers for them, like for the car or something? Because I'm thinking 45 minutes isn't very long.
That's if that's without, that's probably not function.
But let's say it's not a full 8 hours.
Yeah, it's not the charge that's the problem, it's only capturing 45 minutes of video.
Oh,
the storage.
space.
Yeah, because you
Okay.
tested this all out in actual use, right? So you know all the limitations of the camera already, right?
Unfortunately, we live in a day and time with recent events going on in the last couple of years, where the credibility of law enforcement officers has been questioned. And having these types of tools available to us helps build that community trust and also allows us to monitor not just police contact, but also citizens.
Dave, did you have a question?
Well, I have more of a comment, and it just comes along with the discussion of the original upfront cost for the hardware. Though, and as I sit back and I think about, and we're discussing all the possibilities of uses and when they'll be utilized in storage information, it occurred to me that throughout all of our, nearly all of our misdemeanor cases, we're producing materials for people, certainly for defense attorneys and for interested folks who want to make a request for FOIA. We're always getting a request for the police report. We're getting a request for dash cam videos. We're getting a request for any sort of holding room videos, data master things, and this is another piece of information. Now it isn't gonna be take the picture, store it for a year and a day. This stuff's gonna be actively dispersed. It's gonna be actively edited. It's gonna take somebody, it's another piece of information that isn't as easy to produce as a police report. You literally have to be able to take the images, you're gonna have to redact the images and reproduce the images and then sell them or distribute them for whatever cost it might be. It's a tremendous amount of administrative work. It's nearly an infinite body of data that needs to be managed. And it's not, again, it's not gonna be historical, it's gonna be live and it's gonna come out all the time. So when we talk about the cost of it, think in your mind about all the administrative time and effort it's gonna take on the police department side to produce this nearly daily in a redacted form. And it's a big undertaking. I mean,
But that part should be recouped, right?
I'm sorry?
Just the raw costs will be recouped.
The raw cost can be recouped according to the FOIA Act,
Right.
with whatever the cost of actual duplication is and whatever the cost of the the lowest paid qualified person to produce this information. So if you have that person, and let's just say for the sake of argument, it's Sherry Potter. Sherry Potter's not doing other things while she's doing this. And I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. I'm just saying that this is literally the tip of the iceberg in terms of administrative effort and time. And it's going to be very helpful, as everybody's decided, but it's going to be labor intensive. That's just what's occurring to me at this point in time. I can see this. I can see our office sending 4 requests off for defense attorneys on every misdemeanor case. We do it already for 3, and so it shouldn't be that big a deal. And then finally, the other thing I'm wondering with these proposed policies, and I know they're not in place yet, are we going to get any input from the unions as far as how they feel about the policies and how they're going to be implemented in terms of, God forbid, disciplinary issue and things like that? I mean, are they going to weigh in on how they feel about the proposed policy?
Yes. The contract's clearly in that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I figured somebody was going to bring up something about contractual obligations. So I brought a copy of the collective bargaining agreement just in case people asked about that. I always try to be somewhat prepared. Management has distinct rights throughout any collective bargaining agreement, and we have the right to determine all matters pertaining to the services furnished and the methods, procedures, meaning equipment, machines required to provide such services. We have the right to establish work rules, to study and use improved methods and equipment. So we have the right to manage and implement whatever tools necessary that are within reason. And we find at this day and time that this type of equipment is reasonable. Work rules. All employees shall be subject to the rules and regulations and policy and procedure of the Grand Blanc Township Police Department. However, at least 3 days prior to the distribution of a new or revised rule and regulation or policy and procedure, the proposed rule, regulation, policy, procedure will be fully explained to the steward, and he will be afforded an opportunity for input. The way that this works is this policy will have a little tag on it saying that this P&P is going to Officer Smith for the unit steward. You have 14 days to get this back to me. If they don't give it back, any input within 14 days, it's going to be adopted. If it's an emergency situation, I can adopt it immediately. So we can do what we wish on that point. But with our collective bargaining agreements and unions, we have a very, very good working relationship with them. They always have been. We always work very, very well together and communicate together. If there's something that they have an objection, they might catch something that we did not, and we'll take it into consideration and make that modification, which we have done in the past, if they ever get back with us on it. Formally.
How have people been receiving this, the actual guys like Joshua? Are people excited about it, or?
Most people don't really have too much input on it. Sometimes they ask me, hey, are you recording me? And I just simply say, yes, we are being recorded, and that's it. Sometimes, yeah, like this model has a light on it, so that's specifically at night, which we can turn it off. But at night there's a light on it, so some people are aware of it. But because it's been in the media so much, and most people that we contact already have the understanding that we're going to be wearing body cameras anyway, so it's slowly becoming a
I
non-issue.
don't mean that. I mean, how are the cops feeling about it?
How we feel about it? Myself, just because of the way the world is changing, our thoughts or our statements, our credibility has kind of it's harder for us to be credible right off the bat. So specifically, I've had a couple of complaints where my camera has helped me out, basically saying that I did what I was supposed to be doing, and then their allegations were false. So it helped me out a couple of times, and it probably saved a lot of money and time for our township. But
And you're really the only one wearing it?
another officer was wearing it. We had 2 officers that were trying out different models, but I'm the only officer that's wearing this model. And out of all the ones, if I had to choose to wear one, it would be this one.
Are people receptive to it? That's what I'm trying to find out. Are they
public
ready?
or
The cops?
Well, just like
I think they
any,
range.
yeah, just like any new thing, it's going to be hard for someone to get used to it. But just like tasers, nobody had tasers. We got used to them. Some people didn't like them because it was another piece of equipment you had to wear and maintain. But just like anything, with time, you'll be just another piece of equipment that we have to wear.
We went through this when we first installed video cameras many years ago. We had, I think they were 8mm cameras.
Wow.
That's how far back I go. But yeah, we had issues with that. A lot of us don't like change.
Yeah.
But once they got used to it, you explain the reasonableness of the rule and methods and operations that you're trying to accomplish. And once, like Josh has a complaint and
It's easier to,
it's vindicated
it's
that.
easier to just say, hey, watch this video
Yeah.
on what I did correctly, instead of me having to sit there and explain what I did correctly and
Yeah.
hope everyone believes me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I would think everybody would be welcoming it. Hey, I would be all for this. I would just like to know Thursday night, if you can find out how long it's good for. I mean, how many hours in a day you
I
can
can
record.
get you that, send you an email or whatever if you wish.
I would like to know that, because if it's only a couple hours, it just seems like not good enough.
Well,
Even
we-
though I'm assuming it turns on and turns off.
Right, that's the thing, it's not gonna be on for, my shift starts at 3, as, depending on what our requirements are, it wouldn't be 3 o'clock on, 11 PM off.
It's
It'd
gonna be
probably
on
be
traffic
on.
stops or wherever.
Right, but feasibly, well, maybe not feasibly, well, feasibly, I mean, it's possible that you could get in a situation that goes for
Where it'll
8
be full.
hours or 12 hours.
And that's what the chief said, he's gonna contact the.
Yeah,
the
I would
software.
like to know
Try
that.
to figure that out.
Even if it was 45 minutes and that was the best technology available, I would be for this.
I would be too, but.
So, but
maybe-
yeah, but I'm
maybe
just
that's
saying,
too short.
I think that it is a good investment. And just offer a little comment to David. I would be in favor of hiring a contingent person and letting them work 30 hours, 29 hours a week, and just do this solely, because I believe this is that important. And that would probably more than cover any requests.
Well, and again, as you pointed out, we have the ability to recoup our bare minimum expense. So to the extent that we can do that with 90 to 100% accuracy, it would pay for something like that.
Right.
Yeah, that was my initial thought. I mentioned that the FOIA requests are gonna, and this budget, I'm not sure includes that, so I think we are looking at the startup cost for this and not necessarily the complete cost.
But they have a lot of FOIAs over there anyway. I don't see how Sherry's got
Yeah, but
time to
this
do all
is,
that.
this is gonna be
The
more of a
additional
just-
FOIA, yeah,
Well,
but
you're gonna have
it
to
makes
vet it
sense
to-
to have.
Even today, we had a defense attorney call us wanting to review videotape. Technically, it's a FOIA by request, but he doesn't want us to duplicate or anything. Because what we did is the detective made arrangements for him to come in, review the videotape, so we can ascertain yes or no, my defendant did whatever he's accused of or didn't do. And if he needs a copy of it, we'll burn it and charge him. If he just wants to do it, then so be it. You know, we'll take
So,
a half hour of our time to do that. I'm sorry, Mr. Guzak, you had a
So you do have this proposal set up for 3-year storage, right?
Yes.
So it's already 3-year storage, and you've used the equipment, and you've never run out of space, right? It's always been active, and you never run out.
The in-car video?
No, the body cam. Like
Well,
right now,
that hasn't been set up yet on the true 10 terabyte server. It's currently set up on a computer.
Right.
Acting as a hard drive.
Right, but he's never run out of storage on it. I mean, he's been active, he's been using it for a month
Right,
or
you're
so.
talking about within my shift.
Within your shift, you've never had any problems as far
Like,
as.
so we're trying to figure out if it was a malfunction with this, but on one shift, I had approximately 45 minutes of recording, and it was full. We thought it was full.
Yeah, so that's what you're tracking down.
That's what we're trying to figure out, how much actual
Right.
footage we can store on that.
Right. And the other thing you'll notice in the policy, we're very well concerned about, very much concerned about privacy issues. So if we go to somebody's house and we're taking a larceny complaint, the policy says, okay, let them know that we are recording because that's our policy, and if they object to it, then we can shut it off. But they're gonna have to articulate and report on why they shut it off.
But, yeah, well, why would you allow me as a citizen to say, you gotta shut that off? Because it could, now it's affecting my officer, because he can't be protected, like he can say, you know, I did this, well, just watch the tape. And
If it escalates to a situation where he should turn it on or she, then they'll turn it on. But there is a provision in there to.
Really? Because I wouldn't think, I would think once you go in there, you'd want everything, you wouldn't want to turn it off at all.
I would be more inclined to keep the dang thing on, because I know how.
I have to read that policy again on that.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
would
I'm
think
just
you want to
throwing-
change that.
If
To
me
protect
myself,
our
if somebody asked me to turn it off, I would be leaving it on because there's a reason why they want me to turn it off.
Right, that's why I wouldn't want my.
And we just now with our videos in our cars, we have a audio recorder here. So we still do that even now. When we go in somebody's house, we'll turn this one on, just to at least catch the audio. So, just adding to it.
Right, but I would want to leave it on. If I go in there, I'd want it on completely. I wouldn't want you to be able to shut it off at all. That's my goal.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair.
Yeah, that too. I was just thinking for the board and for you guys too, I don't expect the software company or the camera company to come back and say, okay, each camera's got exactly 58 minutes of video storage capability. That's gonna vary a lot. It's gonna depend on the type of video they're recording, the amount of action is. It's gonna especially depend on if there's a lot of audio or very little audio. If you've got a lot of audio in a high active situation, it's gonna take up more space on that memory card inside that camera than watching the geese swim, you know? So don't expect an answer or a set, you've got this many minutes of video. It's not gonna work.
Is there a memory card?
I'm not sure what the media is.
Whether there's a card or not, there's a built-in memory in the,
If there was
in the
a
camera.
card,
There's
it
no
could be
card that can be
upgraded.
taken in
There's
and
no
out.
card, no use to download.
If there's a serious situation, there's gonna be backup in a second camera too.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that we really liked about Digital Alley compared to some of the other companies is we had some customer support issues with some other companies. In this case, we had something going on with their U-Vault in the patrol car, which kind of looks like a router in the back of the tablet, allows the other ones to be activated. Chris happened to be in Lansing. No, it was no big deal. He said, I'll be right there. He just decided just to drive up from Lansing. He's based out of Grand Rapids. And also, they're the only company, not the only company, but their company is also based Michigan-based, where Taser did not have a rep in Michigan. Now, Provision is a Michigan company, based in Ireland, Center, Michigan.
Thank you for the presentation.
We've asked a lot of questions, we're still gonna have more probably Thursday night that we think of, but it looks very favorable.
Do you know when your camera goes off? Like if you were,
What, like on and off?
no. So, I mean, would you know if you wouldn't know if you ran out of space?
This one, we think that when it does run out of space, the unit that I have here, it vibrates continuously,
Oh,
telling me that it's either full or the battery's about to die.
oh, that's cool.
And then, like I said, there's a light on here too.
That's what I thought, there was a light on it, isn't there?
Right, when it's on, it's activated, there's a light that comes on, but there's capability to turn it off, just, if we're doing, on calls or whatever at nighttime, we don't want it illuminating our face, the safety concerns.
Very cool.
Thank you very, very much. We learned a lot.
You're welcome.
Okay, going on. The board will consider approving the DPW director's request for fire hydrant conversion kits at a cost of $21,000. This is for 70 kits at $300 each from the Michigan Pipe and Valve Company, and this is from account 592-536-970-486. What are you converting?
What are you converting them into?
The fire hydrants will still be fire hydrants when we're done. Basically, through our winterization and maintenance program, the technicians identified 70 fire hydrants that have a really bad water hammering problem, which some of you may know what water hammering is. Like in your house, when you shut a faucet off real quick, you'll feel the pipes hammer. That's not good when a water main does that. Pipes can break, sometimes buildings vibrate with that. So converting the old 5 BR hydrants, which is the original model, to a 6 BR changes the way that it functions and the way that it opens and closes. Some of the seats and seals are different in it, so that it's a much smoother operation and it limits that water hammering. This is a maintenance activity that really needs to be done to protect our infrastructure. It's routine maintenance. We've done it before several times. We've just never done it to this scale before.
How many are left to convert?
That's kind of unknown right now. These 70 are what the technicians have identified that are vibrating now. We think that there may be well over 500 out there that need to be done. Out of 2,500 fire hydrants, it's not bad. But as we identify them that they need to be converted, we'll do it then. It doesn't pose a threat unless the hydrants are actually operated.
When we put in new hydrants, do we put in this new type?
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. Actually, new hydrants, it can go either way. We use a couple different types of fire hydrants in the township. We also use a water fire hydrant. It's not built by East Jordan. So there's two different types of hydrants that we go back and forth on. They're both very good hydrants.
And neither of them require replacing.
Correct,
water.
correct. They're the most updated models.
Will there be a plan for replacing others as you come across them?
Yeah, each year as we identify them, because every year for fire hydrant maintenance and flushing, we go through, when we winterize them, we flush them all, we identify any maintenance problems, if they're hard to operate, if they vibrate, if caps are missing, or if they need to be greased. And we do all that work as we go through and winterize them, basically. And we pump them down for the winter, obviously. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Going on, 16, the board shall consider funding 25% of the monies not to exceed $2,340.70 for scoping, which means engineering, toward section 7, 9, and 10 from the Iron Bell Trail. This is a state grant. They have given $300,000 for the engineering for the three sections that they're proposing for Grand Blanc, and this is just for the engineering. And we're putting in a quarter of the deal. They're paying, the state is giving us 75%.
So this is for a trail of some sort?
Pardon?
Yes, bike trail, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
bike trail?
Yeah.
This is that Iron Bell Trail that runs from Belle Isle to Ironwood in the UP. It's going across statewide, and eventually they're doing section by section. This is a portion of it that's gonna come through Grand Blanc Township, and they've identified it. It's just like a multi-purpose trail that eventually it envisions that you could conceivably ride your bike or hike from Belle Isle to the far western UP.
So I noticed that this map has non-contiguous highlighted sections, so I'm wondering, the areas that are not highlighted, are they already, they already have trails on them, I take it, or?
Well, part of it, part of it is already trails of the Iron Bell Trail, but these sections that we're doing just do not have trails at the time, at this time. The part in Burton is part of an old railroad. They're making into a trail, and
I think what Scott's asking though, like if you're
Yeah.
riding your bike on that, is this gonna be trail already? Or what?
Some of it has, the engineering work has already been completed. So these are portions of the trail that engineering has been completed. It's not engineered and ready to go.
Right. So this is all that's left in Grand Blanc Township that we need to scope out, right?
at this time.
All the other ones are done for Grand Blanc Township anyway. It's usually the three
Yeah.
that remain.
That's correct.
For examples, to Mr. Ben's comment, there's already a trail in existence that goes from Genesis down here by Pollock Road, the southern of the township, up here to Grand Blanc Road. Actually goes all the way up to Hill Road. It's already in place.
Yeah, right.
This is gonna connect with.
I'm only gonna bring it up north, okay, on the consumers energy.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Dora looking at it.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring this up.
Yeah.
I'm passing down, I don't know if I have enough for everybody, but you can share them if not. But my son was doing a co-op job down in Columbus, Indiana. Columbus, Indiana is on the National Geographic's list of 10 cities you have to see before you die. And, but anyways, one of the things that they have is extensive bike trails. And this little map booklet is something that they give out at the visitor center there. And I just thought it was kind of unique in that shows their little area with various bike trails. And the bike trails even cut through the side. For example, if there's an overpass, instead of having the bike trail go under the overpass, they've actually cut right into the overpass. And have a tunnel going right underneath
Oh, my
on
God.
an overpass so that the bikes aren't anywhere near the traffic.
Oh, great.
But we talked about, you know, being a walkable, bikeable community and it being a selling point for the community.
Mhm. Yeah.
This is one area that is really committed to doing it, but I just thought,
Very
you know,
This is,
it's something that, keep in mind for our community maybe.
Genesee
It's a great
County,
marketing tool, yeah.
Has a trail map for all of Genesee County, including
Yeah.
all the trails in Grand Blanc that they
Yeah.
put out. It's
Yeah.
set up a little differently, set up differently, but this, as soon as I opened up this right away, I thought, oh yeah, I've seen that, something like that.
Mhm.
I'll have to see, I've got one at home in my desk drawer, if I can get the website off it, I can probably direct you to it. But yeah, it shows how the Grand Blanc maps connect to the city and
Yeah,
Atlas
they
and
put- yeah,
Goodrich
put-
and
yeah,
Burton
right,
and,
mhm,
you know, map, basically bicycling Genesee County.
mhm.
It's
Right.
pretty cool.
So something if we're looking at future plans for our township,
Mhm.
marketing it and becoming more of a
I love
Yeah.
this, it's very cool.
bikeable community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're talking about trails here, you know, I'm spending $2,300.
Mhm. Very good.
And
Something to
the
keep
way
our
I
eye on.
understood that from Megan was that isn't even, that's three separate
Three separate
things
segments.
that may or may not they may not all come in, just one or two of them might? Or they
No,
all come in?
Well, it depends on the, I mean, you know, how much we're gonna get as far as continuing on. This is just for the engineering and, okay, are we gonna, how much they're going to have,
Oh,
or
okay,
the state's
okay.
gonna give us toward continuing on.
Yeah, there'll be
And one-
construction grants that will finish it, right?
Yeah, that's what, So, you know, and how much we have to contribute, you know, to do, you know, one segment at a time, or
Okay.
whether we could do, you know, a larger segment, a smaller segment, whatever.
Okay.
Okay, the board, and by the way, I did meet with people from the trail committee, the people that wanted to be on the trail committee, and inform them about it.
Good.
Okay. The board shall consider a resolution approving the removal of property taxes from Genesee County Land Bank owned properties.
I have some questions on that.
Yeah?
I don't,
So we can collect taxes from the county now? on these?
No, they,
I don't understand.
we don't, they aren't,
They want us to.
yeah, go ahead.
They want, basically, these properties have already been forfeited, and so from a judicial standpoint, the indebtedness has been wiped off the book. They're just asking us to clear it off our books.
Yeah.
It literally it's an accounting process. There's no taxes owed on those properties, either to the county or to us. It's been wiped off.
Thank you. The board shall consider extending the 2015 winter tax bill due date to February 29th, 2016. We've always extended it to the end of the month.
Currently, it's February 15th, and we're just going to the 29th because it's leap year, and it's on a Monday, so, and we
Okay.
have done it in the past.
Any questions? The board will consider approving the superintendent's recommendation for his administrative assistant, Megan Gilman, effective immediately at a starting salary of $33,550 with full benefits. She will be a contracted at-will employee. He's went through several interviews, the first and second interview, and this was a choice.
I did have 41 applicants for that position. We conducted interviews, initial round, and then through secondary interviews. I told Megan, had it been 4 months ago, I don't know that she would have gotten the nod. 3 months ago, maybe not, but it was because she has been here working for us for the past 7 months in a part-time position. And it really was awarded on the strength of her work output, her initiative, her willingness to learn, and she's bright. The way she's embraced it, and so part of my decision-making process came down to the final 3 candidates. Vicki did sit down the interviews as well as another employee. The recommendation to move her forward, I think, also comes with some assistance from Chief Stam and graciously making Sherry Potter available. I'm going to have her do a little job shadowing for a couple of hours a day for the first few weeks if the board agrees with her recommendation or my recommendation. And I'm looking, forward to it. I'm real excited to have her here. Looking forward to get her started.
Good.
Well, she's already moved into his office.
Very good.
There is a copy of the contract that was written up by David that was in front of your positions along with our memo on the recommendation. So after you've had a chance to look at that, and if there's any concerns about the contract and the language in there, it's still in a draft status, we can correct that before Thursday. Thank you.
All right. The board shall consider adopting a resolution supporting a Genesee County Home Program project. Genesee County Habitat for Humanity is proposing a new construction, a single-family home located at 6438 Hill Road, okay? And they called, and they have to have a resolution from us to move ahead. And this is a vacant lot on Hill Road, almost to Center Road.
Or Vassar, right? Almost a Vassar, right? On Hill?
Yeah, it is, I'm sorry, in a Vassar.
Okay.
Okay, any questions on that? I think I'm going to forego reports tonight.
We don't have them tonight.
Oh, yeah, okay, so I think, Dave, do you have any?
We return to this, right?
Yeah,
Feel
sorry.
free to do.
Go back to our Tuesday night agenda.
Oh, yeah, the parks. I don't want to, Dave's been sitting here patiently all this time.
We have cable, and we do have an executive session after this.
Yeah, okay, that's what Okay. It's okay. Discussion on the Parks and Recreation Committee.
So before you guys, tonight you saw a packet of information along with the memorandum. I apologize for not being able to get it into ahead of time, so it was in the packet. But in the memo, I just kind of talk about, why do we come up with this concept of looking at the various committees or commissions that we have to assist you in governance of the township. And what we want to do is put one before you each meeting so that you have the opportunity to review it. It's just a broad-based overview of when it was created, why it was created, what were the bylaws, what was the intent, the mission, vision, values of each one of these committees. Do they still serve the right purpose for what they were intended to do? Because I think that everybody needs to be on the same page, and I found it very invaluable in the past because sometimes things change. Parks and Rec, for example, when you start to look through the package of information that was before you, you're going to see that we have a statement of purpose in there. The Grand Blanc Parks and Recreation Commission was established June 10th, 1970 by agreement of the City of Grand Blanc, the Charter Township of Grand Blanc, and the Grand Blanc Board of Education to provide the represented communities with a coordinated recreation system and to administer the parks and other facilities for both the active and passive recreation interests of the community. It's followed by the established agreement that went through. I apologize for the way it looks, but it was in a PDF format and I couldn't manipulate it, and that's what you got is the way it is, unless that exists somewhere else from 1970, I couldn't find it. And you'll notice that in there, they also, when they first put this together, they had boards, commissions, a definition, what is a recreation commission? What does it do? Why are commissions important? And they walked through about what was the whole point of doing it in the first place. There's a flow chart about what that looks like for the community, a discussion of, policies, budget, accounting, financial control, who's responsible, that kind of thing. And on into the duties and operations, which I think is what's the most important part for you guys to consider. You've also been given another copy of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan from 2013 through 2017, which is just another way of taking a look at, are they accomplishing the goals? So you're not being asked to do anything in particular with the review of these committees or commissions as we look at them each meeting. It's more just to define, and especially I think for the board representatives who are volunteered to work with that specific commission or committee, for them to weigh in and to talk to the board about, are we accomplishing the goals that is your vision for what they're doing? Again, you may or may not want to make any changes or recommendations, but I think really just more like a broad overview and give the board representative for each one of these the opportunity to say, hey, this is what we're working on. Are we fulfilling the mission or the vision? Are we all on the same page? Do we agree that the Parks and Rec Commission is fulfilling its obligation to the community, to the board, and to its members? So that having been said, it's whatever you guys want it to be as we do these reviews. It may be quick, it may be brief. It's also in, right on their landing page when you look at it, I think who we are, where we've come from. I love the idea that, they've got a good website, number one, but it talks about the cooperative effort in 1970. I think this one, and the reason I put it first is because it was kind of appropriate in the fact that we did just have the conversation about the millage request that the Parks and Rec group had brought before this board. I thought, if we're going to consider those things, we should also be considering it broad-based from the historical perspective as well as where they are today and does it meet our needs. So with that, it's up to you from this point.
Kay's here to answer any
I was
questions.
going to say, I don't know if Case can interject. I mean, as the appointed rep for the township for Parks and Rec, I guess I'll put my 2 cents in on this. And for example, I think, and not just the Parks and Rec, but all committees and commissions that we have here are basically set up and appointed, given a task, an assignment, guidelines, and rules to follow, if you will, so that we as a board don't have to run Bicentennial Park. We don't have to run the summer soccer leagues. We don't have to run, or I should say as a board, review every sign, ordinance, zoning deal, or every purchase the fire department needs to make for new equipment or anything like that. So we set up these committees or commissions to basically manage that for us. Parks and Rec Commission, and you were on it for a while too, you probably attest to this, meets regularly, does a pretty good job as a commission with input from members of the community, the schools, the city, the township. Create a plan to run the parks, update the master plan, address items that need to be addressed. And one of the big things that I see facing Parks and Rec right now is we have for the past several years with new soccer fields and new playground equipment and so forth, looking at recent issues of maybe vandalism and so forth that's happening in our community, looking at the need for security or cameras at parks and so forth. There's a lot of improvements we're making, a lot of additions to the property, if you will, but the maintenance hasn't changed since the 1970s. And we are finding that we need to come up with a process or a system to keep the funds in place in the budget to properly maintain this park so it doesn't deteriorate, go into great despair. The Parks and Rec Commission, I think, did great due diligence in discussing that and bounced around several different ideas and proposed multiple things and came up with a proposed millage rate that we would like to see at least presented and asked for to the people to fund that. And it came to the board where it was approved, I think, on Tuesday night, or at least accepted, I shouldn't say approved, accepted on the Tuesday night meeting. And I wasn't here for Thursday to see how that discussion went. I think the Parks and Rec Commission members, I've had a couple members contact me and feel like, what did we do all this for? So.
Well, I'll respond to that. I think it got the ball rolling for us to look at things. I don't recall approving on Tuesday, but and then reversing anything. I guess, my thought is it started the discussion on that issue. And I don't know that anybody's opposed to it, to improving the parks. I think we just have questions on how we want to do it, is it enough, and how are we going to go about the language of it. So there's a lot of homework, I think, still to be done. I appreciate Dennis putting together the information. I haven't had a chance to digest it, because we just got it tonight, but I appreciate getting this and being able to look at it for the first time, but, you know, one of the things I'll just throw out there, I guess it goes back to the governance issue, that I think there are probably some boards that we allow to have certain, the parameters are different for different commissions, let's put it that way. So for example, our planning commission, we get people saying, hey, why doesn't the planning commission do this? You know, why don't they do that? Well, the planning commission really has a limited scope as to what they do, and they don't spend money and what have you. So their parameters are different than the parameters for, let's say, the fire commission or Parks and Rec commission. I guess what I see this being done is, I appreciate looking at each of these commissions, is to look at, are we on the same page with what these commissions' responsibilities are and what their authorities are? You know, do they have the ability to borrow money, you know, whatever commission it is? Do they have the ability to engage in asking, you know, going out and seeking loans or bonds or whatever without consulting us or getting our approval? I guess I just want to make sure that we're clear, not just about Parks and Rec, but about all of them. And we've got a library that needs money. Are they going to come to us and say, hey, we're going for this? Well, you know, what's the mechanism for that?
The library has.
So I think, well, Genesee County, but I'm saying our own McFarland, but, so I appreciate getting that governance piece put together of how these things work, because I'm not sure our board is real familiar with how all these things work, and we've just assumed, you know, what other people have done in the past is what we're going to do. Just, you know, glancing at this organizational chart on page 1, it's on the back of page 3. I see the community of Grand Blanc, you know, as the stakeholders at the top of it, and I see Board of Education, Township Board, City Council, and then the Parks and Recreation Commission, 7 members, and the Director of Parks and Recreation under that. Just a couple of quick questions that again, I haven't read all the policies here, but I'm not sure, does the Board of Education put money into this, into the Parks and Rec?
No, there's this for the resources.
Okay, so for the governance part of it. Does the Parks and Recreation?
No, they provide like the schools during the
Okay.
summertime,
Okay. Yeah, that's
you
about
know,
it.
swimming pools, you know.
Sure. Well, use of facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, I see the Parks and Recreation Commission, and I see our Director of Parks and Recreation under that. Does that mean that that commission hires and fires the director and staff of Parks and Recreation, or? I'm just looking at this strictly as an
Yeah,
organizational chart.
The
Because to me,
commission,
that's more of a board decision, I would think, that we're fiscally responsible here for the parks.
it was recommended by the board, I think, and then came to vote.
I saw that on here.
I think it's in the,
Number 5.
Yeah, it's in
on
the-
page 3. The Grand Blanc Parks and Recreation Commission shall have the power to appoint a director of Parks and Recreation who is adequately qualified through education and experience and such other personal blah, blah, blah. So yes, the commission can hire and fire the director.
Here's the thing though with this and with our other commissions and committees is we often, I mean, the funding mechanism is coming from you and the city. And so we've given, for example, the fire department and the Parks and Rec budgets come to you for approval. And if they're if the money's in the budget and you agree to fund that portion of the budget, then presumably whatever they presented, or you give them the authority to go ahead and hire or fire or change their workforce in some way. So you're like Congress in that you control the purse strings, and you may allocate your responsibilities to a commission or a committee to choose, but the buck stops with you guys. So the budget process is important. Fire department budget's very important. That's your time to shape the policy if you're gonna shape the policy. Dennis is a good example. Megan's gonna serve under his direction, and he'll still discretion, but Dennis is not gonna pay her, you're gonna pay her. So It all kind of works the same way.
Right, but even with Megan, it comes to the board for our approval. So in that sense, we still control that.
That's
And
correct.
we still have the authority. For instance, if we think, not that this is gonna happen, but if we think that Dennis is wrong in his request to terminate her, we can override that.
That's right.
So, but that brings me to this point on the fire chief and Kay. I think we are responsible for them, correct?
Well,
There are,
This is interesting because we had a change in the law regarding the fire department where one of the municipalities had to take actual ownership of employment responsibilities. We don't have a similar provision in the Parks and Rec statute. And so we haven't recognized these folks as our direct employees.
Not even constitutionally.
So, well, it's true, but we have, I think, and this is, I always have to relearn this, but we're always like, where do the payroll responsibilities go? Where are the benefits? Are they on our benefits and things like that? But it's basically true that we, as a majority partner in these things, are usually taking the lead through our funding.
To our budgetary funding.
Yeah.
well, so I guess use the parks then, because I think that's a good example. If their retirement benefits, who's on the hook for those?
Parks and Recreation Commission's budget, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, well, I mean, to the extent that we contribute, whatever percentage we contribute with Parks and Rec, we are on the hook.
Okay, but I'm actually looking, like at healthcare, because we just had this presentation on healthcare, and I'm assuming that the parks are part of that list of active employees, maybe not.
No, they're not.
They're not?
No?
We fund our
Healthcare?
yes, independently. And
And
the
retirement
township and
healthcare.
city contribution to their appropriations to our budget are less than 30% of our entire budget.
Could you repeat that, Kay?
They have no retirees yet.
Could you repeat
And we have
that?
one.
One
No, actually, we have
retiree
two.
and what, 3 full-time employees or?
The way it's set up for healthcare retirement benefits, the commission instituted a policy about 5 or 6 years ago that it would fund 3 of the remaining employees. One has since retired. And the only other 2 that qualify are myself and the assistant director. And then the remaining full-time employees will not qualify for healthcare and retirement.
The remaining ones, how long have they been there and how long will they stay?
Well, that's a good question. Most of them have only been there 4 or 5 years. And the qualifications for myself and for the assistant director to get healthcare benefits was, I think, 55 years of age and 30 years of employment as a minimum. So, and quite likely, the other remaining employees won't hit those marks.
Boy, that's a dead-end job for those guys then, if there's nothing to look forward to.
Well, their current salaries aren't something that are gonna hold them there for us either, so.
Exactly. To answer that, typically that is not a position that somebody goes into for a career choice. It's a
Well,
position somebody
Kay
goes into
did.
for- No, I'm not talking about the director, I'm talking about the
I
other.
know, but she'll leave pretty soon.
And she has healthcare.
Yeah.
She
Yes,
gets,
but
yes.
whoever follows her, right?
Well, I mean, if it's,
In
you
the
know,
private
it's just-
sector.
Where do they get the money to, if we only give 30%? Would you say the township and the city only give 30%?
It's program fees, rentals, special events, fundraising.
So, repeat that, okay, if you would, it's, who gives 30% of
The
the,
city and township combined is less than 30% of our budget.
The rest of it is through softball tournaments and
now are you saying
use of the
that's your entire
pavilion.
budget? Not just administrative or whatever else, maintenance of the parks and everything?
Yes.
That's it. That's, I tried to
Which is
bring
why
up
we're
the
looking,
other.
we're looking for some funding here.
We may have been our own worst enemy.
And part of it, I think, this is kind of changed the subject, but it's, when the Parks and Rec Commission was formed and this budget process was created, it was more than adequate to do the job.
Right.
But the trouble is, this was 40 years ago, and
Well, you didn't even have a park.
Right.
You didn't even have
Bicentennial Park was a dirt road in a field.
No, it wasn't even our property at that point.
So,
One of the things that I brought up at our planning commission meeting this past week with our planning consultant, Clear Zoning, was that we do have a number of plans. So for example, we've got our township master plan. We've got the Parks and Recreation plan. We've got a pathways plan. And I just wondered how many of those have anybody looked at and overlaid on each other and said, hey, you know, if we're trying to improve our parks, how does that improve, you know, or how does that fit with our
Work
master
with
plan,
trails,
with our
work with
pathways,
the
what have you. You know, one of the things, and I brought this up before, and I might be a broken record or something, but we had a meeting at the Chamber of Commerce that people were saying what things they wanted accomplished in the township or the city. And the appearance of our community was like top of the list. And I just think our parks, the pathway, all these master plans, you know, things like this map of the walk road, that all needs to be considered when we're looking at even a village. Because how do we overlay those things? And I don't know that they have. Our planning consultant said that he was going to take a look at it and make some recommendations to us. So, and that was just this past week, so I'm sure we haven't heard anything back yet. But that's part of my concern, is that I brought up at the last meeting, that I think we need a comprehensive plan that incorporates all those different plans that we have, rather than just going at a piece.
some of the discussions we've had at the, for example, and kind of goes into that, Scott, at the Parks and Recreation level is, Parks and Rec has historically been the parks, Bicentennial Park, and then the city got Physicians Park and Rust Park. Now we have pathways through Bicentennial Park, pathways in the city also, I guess, to Rust Park, Physicians Park and so forth. The township, through various grants and other funding mechanisms outside of Parks and Rec, put these pathways through the parks. Parks and Rec said we're going to expect to maintain that as well. Is it part of a pathway project for the whole township or a community, or is it, you know, that the Bicentennial Park border, all of a sudden, does that section of asphalt become our problem to maintain?
Right.
So there's some things there that probably need to be looked at and discussed.
I agree. I really don't see it, why we couldn't even talk about our DPW doing some of the work too. I mean, if we have a road grader, you know, what have you, why our people can't do some of that? You know, if it's owned by.
They do something.
And they do.
Yeah, they have been contributing,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Not as, you know, not in
Part-
general maintenance, but in things that the pavilion, getting the pavilion ready and things like
Right.
grading and things like that.
Or even snow.
Chloride applications and so forth on the gravel road through our park. It's not part of the county road system. We do get that done, so.
Well, that last road to the parking lot was all done by DPW,
Yeah.
most of it,
Mhm.
the parking lot and the road into it.
Yeah.
But again, that's charged back to Parks and Rec Commission, so it still goes back to our authority as a Parks and Rec Commission to find funding, create a budget, and pay for it, because DPW funds legally can't pay for
No.
construction of a
It's
pavilion.
gotta
I
come
mean, it's
from
got to
that.
come from
General
Bicentennial
fund.
Parks, general fund. So,
I think we helped with the general fund on some of it, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
The state- And the city did too, as the city parks.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
so
We paid, right. But I think the budget needs to be increased too.
We had
I
the
agree.
DPW
Just
do
One of the
but it
things I'm
came
not
out of
sure
general
is the
fund.
financial,
Yeah,
Is
as
the
far as
sec-
building and grounds.
if there's any segregation of funds. So for example, let's say that there's a large softball tournament at Bicentennial Park. You collect fees for those types of things, right? Do those funds stay with Bicentennial Park, or do they go to the overall operation of all the parks, city and township?
Well,
or-
we don't operate the city parks at all.
Okay,
The city DPW maintains those, the city operates those parks.
okay.
You
Is
know,
that part of their 30%? Up
No.
to 30%, that's not counted.
That's on top of their appropriation.
Okay.
You know, we do a couple programs in those parks, but for the majority of our programs are either bicentennial or on school property. And that is the school's contribution. We get, after a school function or a school program, we're the first priority for, you know, gyms, pools, whatever facilities we need.
Walking track, classrooms, all kinds of
Yeah,
stuff.
fields,
Yeah.
etc. You know, I think probably something that you may or may not be aware of is our setup is very unique. I mean, as far as my compatriots throughout the state, they either work for their township or they work for their city. They don't work for the city, township, and schools. You know, they're not answering to 4 boards, they're answering to 1. And they're owned by somebody. So, you know, when their budget considerations come up or they need funding for something, they have one source to go to and that source owns them and
Yeah.
Right. Would you
Where-
prefer to have a one source? I mean,
well, I
not saying
don't
which
know now.
source.
I mean, I don't know now. I mean, we're so far into this. But I was just pointing out the uniqueness of getting 4 bodies to work together and getting them to agree, and, you know, the different funding issues and questions and that kind of stuff is, you know, can be challenging.
Historically, and again, some of us have seen the insides of it, the community doesn't see it all. The community sees a seamless Parks and Rec committee. And I think all 3 municipal boards and the Parks and Rec Commission do a great job of portraying that to the community. It's
yeah, right, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think it's just, I just want to point out that it is very different from how the
Yeah,
majority
right.
of Parks and Recreation departments throughout the state work.
Well, that's one thing that was flabbergasted people, you know, when Governor Snyder wanted to see how many coordinated deals. We have 18 deals where we work with other
municipalities around us.
Yeah, with either different committees or different sources.
okay.
What, can you tell the whole board what the city really gets out of this? If we're not managing their parks,
Well, they're getting the benefit of us providing programs for their residents.
okay.
And, I mean, you know, we don't check their ID at the gate and say, oh, you can't come in by Centennial Park, not in the city. As they don't do the same at, you know, resident positions. So, you know, I think we provide, the last time we had our master plan done, the company that did it said that our programming would compare to any municipality statewide, whether it was, you know, a Lansing, Grand Rapids, whatever, or that we offer as many or more programs than any municipality throughout the state. So we're providing the city residents a good service, as well as the township residents.
And Kay, along the point of the ID, that would be true, I mean, we don't check ID from anybody in that park, right? I mean, it could be somebody
I
from.
mean, we charge, like, adult softball players, non-resident fees.
Yeah.
So I think-
Oh, we do, so,
Right.
so
But
if I
it's-
bring the
it's-
team in, and each player individually, if I live in Grand Blanc, I pay 1 fee and.
Well, now those are for our leagues. Now, for the tournaments, that's a flat fee.
Okay.
But for our leagues,
Yeah.
or, you know, we have adult men's league, and adult co-ed softball, and we have adult kickball.
Okay.
So if they have non-residents, then their residents pay, or those players pay, I think it's $12. It's not a huge fee.
Yeah, right.
And we have a non-resident fee for the pavilion rentals,
And the water park too, right?
right?
Splash pad.
So that money you collect for those fees, just remind me, you may have told me, or told us that, does that stay with that park then? Like pavilion fees
Well,
or?
Basically, yes. I mean, it goes into our operation. We know, the only facilities that we operate are Bicentennial and Senior Center. So, basically, yes.
All right. So let's say that it goes into the operation of the Parks and Rec. That money isn't being used to maintain the city parks because we don't maintain
Absolutely
them,
not.
or you don't. So if anything, the city residents might benefit from that money by participating in future programming, what have you.
Right.
But that money isn't used to maintain the other parks.
You'll see, if you hang out at the city parks at dusk, you'll see city DPW trucks coming in and emptying the trash and locking the bathrooms and so forth and stuff like that. The city does.
And ours does the same, but it
But
Our
they're
maintenance
still-
staff does it.
they're still
Our
in
maintenance staff
charge of the
advises that.
seniors, okay? So you got, the senior center is in the city and that, that's maintained.
And that's maintained by the commission.
so your people maintain the park as opposed to our DPW guys going and empty the trash or whatever.
Correct.
Which might be something to consider, I mean, if we're looking at how we reduce cost and expense, I mean, if we have
Well,
people.
then it would come out of the general fund, so it's
Right.
not reducing it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just
if we already
moving
have
it.
people-
I would venture to guess that my employees are paid significantly less than the
Yeah.
DPW.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if we have time on their hands, well, I don't know that they do, and they're doing similar jobs, I don't know.
But they're
Pretty
appointed,
well scheduled.
they gotta have the employees there for the general maintenance anyway, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it'd be hard to quantify
Yeah.
Right,
whether that's.
especially,
Good point.
we deal with a lot of weather, so weather changes, then,
Right. You need somebody
Yeah.
out there.
right.
Here's a real political question for you. Just from me to you, don't anybody else listen here. What if they took out the Parks and Rec Commission and just had the three governments over you and then the director? Would that seems like that would make things easier.
Well, I don't know that it would. I think that the commission, it has two city representatives, one council person, one elected. It has two township representatives, and one's elected. School board appoints two, but not necessarily, we've never had actually an elected school board member. And then those six select a community at large person, someone who applies who's interested to be on the commission. So I think they provide a good buffer because, I don't know how the three municipality boards could come together to meet to work on top of everything else you already do.
Yeah.
Well, not that they would come together, but that the director would appeal to each of them for what you needed.
But then,
Because-
then you're making that person like a football. I'm gonna go to you and you're gonna say this on Tuesday, and then I'm gonna go to city council and they're gonna say that on Thursday, and then I'm gonna go to the school board and they're gonna say something else on Friday.
Okay,
And
but
then
I don't think the commission seriously has served the parks that well. I don't think they've, I think that the
I don't
parks,
understand why you say
Can
that.
I ask you
I
one
think
question?
that- I think
Attend a meeting before you criticize us, please. I'm sorry, I am getting defensive here. Attend one Parks and Rec Commission meeting before you say we're not doing our job or serving our purpose.
I would think that you would come to the board and tell us the different things that you need. I didn't know how
It was
bad
brought
the
to this board in
parks,
September.
I did not know how bad the parks were
It was brought to this board in September.
until Kay brought her presentation and showed us the basketball courts and the inline skating.
Well, I think, Chris, that the reason that we haven't come is that, we've had, for the last 10 years, budget cuts. And at, whether it be a staff meeting or a board meeting, it's discussion about the township board doesn't have money. So, I think it was just that we didn't feel there was,
They might not have had the money, but it would still be nice to know that the crucial parts of the park were not being
Well-
able to be used. So if money ever did come up or become available,
okay, that's a point taken, that in the future we can do that. I just think we felt that I felt especially, that there wasn't wiggle room to do that. So,
Right, because your budget was cut
Well-
more than once.
Yeah.
I was unaware of the,
Well, I think we all were unaware, but everybody, as you said before, every commission that we've had here has had cuts. And so we knew that everybody was having trouble, but there was no way to add to the.
but it's one thing to cut, and the cuts might be painful, but it's quite another thing to cut like stuff that's essential. To a park, a basketball court is essential. I think.
In defense a little bit of the board here, I've thought about this since the meeting where we chose to delay or whatever. We took no action. It's kind of, if you think about just the township tax base, the whole sliding assessment thing since 2008, right? I kind of made a comparison to this, like the schools usually do and have done. What gets cut first when there are budget crises, right? Usually it's the sports programs and those kinds of things in the past, the wood shops and the metal shops, et cetera, right? Industrial arts. We've had our mind on balancing this budget, unfunded liabilities. What did we do with the revenue that was $14 million in 2009 in our budget was down in the 11s, right?
Yeah.
Okay, without cutting services. So what happened, in all fairness and defense of the board, Kay, is, Parks and Recreation was one of those things where we said, it just wasn't one of those that was at the top of our priority list to make sure there was extra funding there because we were fighting these other fires, right? At least that's the excuse I came up with to justify myself why I let this kind of a thing or didn't put that on the front of my priority, right? Well, now it's almost, the presentation that was brought to us was obviously brought it right to the top. It shows us that there's some neglect here, right? And maybe now, Kate, to answer you were right, there wasn't anything there to throw at the board. We didn't raise your contribution for 5 years that I know of, right? And now maybe, the sponge is getting a little damper there, we got something we can wring out a little bit,
Yeah. Can I add to that? As a board member for the township, I totally agree with you, and I agree that, there certain things you have to look at funding and, police and so forth, we gotta keep up. Also, as a Parks and Rec Commission member, I also kind of come to the realize the park and most of the stuff in it is all kind of aging or coming of age all at the same time. So it's not like you've been neglecting this for 10 years. Like all of a sudden, it's like in the last 2, maybe 3 years, like, wow, look at that. It's everything is aging and deteriorating at the same time. So we're kind of, it's not, well, let's re-roof the pavilion this year. It's like, we gotta do all this stuff.
Well, the severity of the last 2 or 3 winters on those asphalt surfaces.
Yeah, and that has heat and contributed to it as well. So, but a lot of the maintenance seems, it's all, your water heater in your house is good for 10 to 15 years. Everything in the park is kind of coming due to that point right now.
Right, a lot of the structures were built at the same time when the park was first purchased, I guess.
And the second thing is, Kate's done a magnificent job of getting grants, okay? She's done more grants than anybody I know of.
It's called begging.
But, well, I tried to compete but didn't come close, okay? But the second thing is, grants don't look very much at maintenance, okay?
No,
They
no.
look for new programs, new things like that, and that's, so in order to at least get some payment to move ahead, she's done that, and the maintenance has fallen.
Well, and that's one thing I think, we look at with the DPW and the police, and rather than them coming to us saying, well, we need 4 new vehicles this year. We need them like right now. Is we set up a plan so that over a period of time,
I think that's gotta be
we
done.
know in 2020 what we're going to need to replace.
Yeah.
And I think, we just built a new pavilion at the park.
How long is it good?
When we were building that, we didn't ask the question, unfortunately, hey, is this the only thing we need to be doing right now, or is there other things we need to do instead?
And I think that's one of the questions, in bringing that up, Scott, that it was delayed, Larry, that there was a question of, is this really gonna be enough if we put in a maintenance plan for, what we need?
We discussed that extensively at the Parks and
Yeah,
Rec
I know.
Commission as
I
well.
know you
So I
did,
want to, again, Kay's presentation here wasn't like, okay, the last meeting, you come up with this plan, here it is. And it was a well thought out plan.
We were very well aware of it,
Well,
and
I haven't had a chance to look through the master plan here for the parks, but one of the things I'd like to see is how do we tie the master plan, because the we're looking at a 10-year millage is
Yeah,
what was
right.
proposed to us, which I think, what is it, about 290,000 a year that we
Mhm.
generate? And I think the list of
Yeah.
items that need to be replaced or repaired were what,
That's it, it's got.
900,000 or something. So I mean, in the first 3 years, we're gonna cover those.
Mhm.
Now we have another
Yeah,
7 years where we get that money, and I'm not one to just say, let's
Yeah.
pile up a slush fund, which I'm sure the money would be used well,
Yeah.
probably, given the people we have in charge, but I would much rather be able to tell taxpayers that, hey, here's our plan of
yeah.
how this money is spent,
Mhm.
not just to cover these repairs, but
Mhm.
after that, it's not just
Yeah.
gonna go
Mhm.
wherever, it's, you know, that, hey, here's our vision. I think if, and, you know, and when I talked about people running the polls, I meant that
Yeah.
if people have a clear vision of what we want to build here, maybe people will support it a lot
Mhm.
better than if we just say, well, we're going to use it for parks.
Yeah.
No, here's the plan for making Grand Blanc a walkable community.
Mhm.
You know, I know it's
And
not
here's-
Parks and Rec, I'm just throwing this out of
Yeah.
my thought, but here's our plan for what Bicentennial Park, not just replacing the basketball, but here's what we envision
For the future.
7 years
Yeah.
from now.
Yeah.
And now you get people buying in rather than, oh, it's just another tax to
Mhm.
pay somebody's, you know, whatever. So, I'm not sure we have all that together. I haven't seen it. If the Parks Commission's worked on that, I guess they need to forward that to us, but I haven't seen it.
We have looked at that too. I know he gets really bad nosebleeds
He's
sometimes.
standing out there talking to
Oh, he is?
the counter.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, yeah, he's on the
Thanks.
phone, he's with the chief out there.
Oh, thanks. I've seen him get like half-hour nosebleeds.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So I guess, I don't know if the Parks Commission has put that together or not, but that's something that I guess I'd like to see is, you know, because I don't know that in the past, if we just say, hey, we're gonna put a millage out there and not really give a full plan of, here's what we envision 7 years from now looking like, or 5 years from now, or what have you, rather than just, here's the laundry list of stuff we're gonna repair.
We do have a list of proposed plans and stuff, and we can probably come back in the springtime or so with a proposal. I'd be glad to lead that up and kind of show the board, here's what we're, you know, the grand master plan of what we'd like to see developed in this section of the park and that section of the park and what we're gonna do here. But again, kind of in the way we're several funding stuff like that, you can get grants to build a soccer field, you get grants to build a pavilion or a playground. In fact, we just got a donation for a handicap accessible playscape that's just great. But you can't get that kind of grants or donations for maintenance and new concrete.
So let's put that in the plan then, so we know how much is gonna be needed for maintenance.
The funds that went into the new pavilion and the new playscape, I mean, those weren't funds that could have been used for maintenance. Those were all grants, donations.
Right. Yep, I'm familiar with the grant
So-
process, but
Well,
then let's set up a fund that's gonna be, you know, used, the interest is going to be used for maintaining the parks or whatever, you know, but let's spell it out rather than just, we're gonna do this laundry list of things, and then after the first 3 years, who knows where it's going.
Well, our staff has started to work on the priority list.
Yeah.
And our area facilities committee is also having some input, so we know we have to
Right.
Yeah.
not just provide the list.
That's, we've got a kind of an escape route now. We know we want millage to go before the people. I mean, you know, I don't think there's anybody on the board that doesn't want a millage to go before the people. Right now, we're having, as of yesterday, or Friday, I guess it was, we had this new deal coming from the state that you have to, can't say anything about your millage for 60 days beforehand. I think there's going to be enough protests to work with that in the near future. But in the meantime, people are
We
stuck.
can't even talk about it. We can't even say what the millage will go for.
No,
We can't even
yeah.
post it on the township website.
No.
Nothing.
No, because that's a resource, and you can't use a resource.
Right. So we basically have to go out and form a group of citizens that we would have to raise funds for privately.
Yeah.
That would have to communicate to the public, like, look, here's what's on the ballot, here's
Yeah.
what it's gonna pay for. Yeah,
Yeah, it's.
I lost some respect for Snyder when he signed that.
That's where I think it behooves us if.
That's what I'm
if
saying, we
there's
have
a
time to
plan
use it, yeah.
That shows exactly where the money's going, because I
Mhm.
think, whenever I hear of a millage, when I hear objections to it, it's usually information that people don't have that causes the problem. It's
Mhm.
that they don't, the first school millage, I
Yeah.
think, went down in defeat here in Grand Blanc
Mhm.
because people didn't have a good idea
Yeah.
of where all the
Mhm.
money was going, and they thought it was going to fund retirement
Yeah,
or whatever. In this day and age, when people are struggling to make their own bills,
Yeah,
they want to make sure the money they're spending is going to
Exactly.
something useful. And that's what I'm saying with Parks and Rec. If we're going to put it out there, let's, have an idea
Yeah.
exactly where the money's
if we're
going to
gonna,
go.
if we're gonna have to use
Yeah.
community, we're gonna have to,
Yeah,
and that's individual connections, so,
and show value for the tax dollar
Mhm.
in advance.
yeah. It's gonna, to do it, as I say, I think going to MTA convention next week, that's going to be one hot topic, and so I think that they're gonna have to fix it, because it's really causing an uproar.
And I think also, I'd like to see what Mr. Arroyo comes back with from
Yeah,
our clear zoning
yeah,
on looking at our master plan and our park
and
plan.
how it fits, how
And
it
even-
meshes with parks,
And even tackling, we need to talk, maybe it isn't tonight, but talk about, the walkability of Grand Blanc.
Yeah,
And maybe the pathways aren't a parks and recreation function, but whose are they and how do we maintain them? And can we include that in some of this
Mm.
whole scenario?
One goal I would like to see out of this, and I thank you for bringing this to the board and other commissions and committees as well, is I'd like to see us as a board understand what the authorities and responsibilities of each commission is and why we have them. I, for one, as a board member, don't want to review every site plan. I don't want to review every zoning board appeal. I don't want to have to review every plan. So we have these commissions to do some of the, it's the wrong word here, but the light work, the dirty work. They're gonna muddle through that stuff and resolve it, and in a rare case, even bring an exception to the board. Fire Commission, Parks and Rec, Zoning Board of Appeals, Historical Commission, all that stuff, unless we want to have a board meeting once a week instead of 3 times a month. And that probably wouldn't even be enough. We can't manage all that effectively. We cannot do it. So we need to figure out what the authority is of these commissions, fine tune them if need be, and then let them run the commissions. That goes for all of them.
Well, and based on what Larry just said, we found this with our fire agreement. Statutes have changed, reporting requirements have changed. And this agreement, however well-written it may have been by 2 older lawyers in town, needs to be amended a little bit. I'm thinking about the employment responsibilities, for example. We just heard tonight that we're staring down the barrel of several $1 million for promises that we made. And we've got to understand all of our obligations, and we have recently had to come to grips with that with the Fire Commission, and I think we have to come to grips with that with the Parks and Rec, for the employee security, and also have a discussion with the city about how are we going to handle things as these responsibilities develop. So I don't know how we fit that into our discussion. But it's a great. I'm glad that it's been brought to our attention. Particularly on the heels of our future obligations, we've probably got to tweak this a little bit to shore up our responsibilities to make sure what we're in for and what we need to raise money for. I think it's maybe more than we think.
Yeah.
And who does the master plan for that? Is it the commission or is it?
For the parks,
Yeah.
We normally hire
Yeah.
a firm to help us with it.
Mhm.
and then does it come before each of the boards, or how does
Yep.
that work?
It's presented to the city and the township.
And schools,
And school board, yes, thank you.
and Parks and Recreation.
And I agree, I don't want to micromanage, but as fiduciary, having their fiduciary responsibility, I also want to make sure that we don't have commissions or groups out there committing our township to things that we're not aware of either. So, we've got to have veto power on some things, and the ability to say, hey, we need to know more about this, come and talk to us on this thing that I guess, yeah, we want them to be a volunteer group that work for us, but they aren't autonomous either. know what I'm saying?
Right.
That controls are set up in the agreement, the layout. Yeah.
Right, that they're not operating autonomously from the board, you know, that they report to us, and we have some veto powers too on some things. So
You're
if, for
certain.
example, a fire commission wants to buy a thingamajig that costs $6,000, guess what? You know, that's beyond where their limit is. They need to come to the city and the township board, or Parks wants to commit to this. They need, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Not picking on any one particular, but a director, for example, can do this, this, and this, but can't sign an agreement for a contract of
Right.
this. Yes, I agree.
we need to have policies in place like that,
But if we spell it out right in the actual
Yeah.
agreement,
exactly, then they know where to operate.
they know where to operate,
Yeah.
the commission knows where to operate.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
the board knows when the commission
Yeah.
is doing their obligation or not doing their
Yeah.
obligation.
Yeah, and when it comes
And
to our.
I agree.
Yeah, and the Parks Commission is made up of people from the city, from the school, whatever. Bicentennial Park, the township, what have you, fits more into our master plan and what do we want to have happen physically to that area. I think that realm kind of enters into this board more than, you know, the park, we want their guidance on it, but when it comes to, hey, what are we gonna do to the Bicentennial Park? Well, you know, the Parks Commission wants to do this, but the township, well, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
There's-
it helps when we're all aware of it, but,
Right.
I think, you know, that, let's go back and look at the master plan, see what we know, that, where we're going, you know, what it's based on, and,
As well as this agreement, I think, too, that
yeah.
Mr. Ladd.
Yeah, and the agreement, and see what we want changed, okay? And the, Kay and Larry, the whole commission knows, you know, okay, this is what we're looking at as far as maintenance and where we want to go with that.
Who handles the
To
day-to-day?
go ahead with the millage, yeah.
Who handles the day-to-day financial for the Fire Commission as well as the Parks and Rec?
I handle Parks and Rec.
Oh, you handle Parks?
Fire chief
Yeah.
handles the fire commission. And he brings everything he does to the fire commission for approval.
Right.
Same thing with Kay, just like we do at this meeting, she posts the month's, you know, checks registered, everything that we spent for the previous month to the fire, or the Parks and Rec Commission.
But the township, I think, writes the checks for the fire department, right? But they don't for you guys.
The township writes the checks for the fire department payroll,
Exactly.
but there is a fire department budget as well, we have our own.
Payroll. And we don't
And
for
our-
Parks
well,
and Rec.
You process our payroll, but we pay for the payroll, we pay for our health insurance. It goes through you, but we reimburse you for everything.
Okay.
And we don't sign that, it's all signed by the
Yeah.
Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Okay, that-
So we, and I'm just throwing questions out there that I don't know the answers to, but as far as budgets, I know we get an annual budget. What about the financials for, we get a
Yeah.
financial on a regular basis from the fire department?
We get an audit from.
We get an annual audit from the Parks and Rec.
Mhm.
It's presented to the city, the schools, and the township board.
All right.
It's a really boring thing to look at if you want to see it, but I will be glad to give you copies of our monthly financials for the Parks and Rec.
Well, we probably got, I mean, again, based on what we heard tonight about our obligations, we probably do have to take a look at those and make sure that they're in line with what we have. Dennis just suggested to me what I think is a good idea, and that is that I will take a look at this agreement and see how it needs to be modernized, in a similar way to what happened with with our fire commission. And also, we may get some input, I think, from the city regarding this agreement itself. Now, that process, I think it's important, and I think it's going to benefit not only the employees and all the participating members, but it may take, your funding issue is going to need to move forward if you're going to do something in 2016. So, you're kind of, I think you're getting a pretty good handle on what your immediate needs are and what your future desires might be. But I think that maybe with Dennis's help and some conversation with the city, we should maybe mark up this agreement within the next 60 days or so, and just talk about whether or not it covers everybody. It identifies all the, and there are changing facets to your responsibilities in terms of maintenance as equipment grows, as different elements come into play, like pathways and things. I mean, I think it's probably a pretty good time to start working on that.
me ask you
Yes.
Well,
thoughts on it. I'm sorry, go ahead, finish, then I got a question.
well, I was just going to say, I wanted to finish up, so you go ahead.
Well, my thoughts on that is, and I kind of agree with having the city and the school board involved in it, but here's how I kind of foresee that going, is limit it to the mayor and the city-appointed Paul Nass, the city-appointed rep to the thing, and the supervisor, and maybe the appointed rep, and Kay, and the school board's appointed rep. Because I don't want the whole city council, the mayor, a body of 7, and then this township board, a body of 7, and the whole school board, a body of 7,
Yeah.
all reading this thing and saying, oh, we need this. Let's come up with a proposal with a few people to present to all 3 entities.
Yeah, as well.
Yeah, and Dennis as well, absolutely, yeah.
It should be the superintendent as opposed to their appointee.
I agree.
Right.
Okay,
For the school.
for the school, you want the super, yeah, because if the appointee is not actually a board member,
No.
you're right, so yeah, that.
And the same with the city.
Mhm.
On the city, it should be probably there.
Yeah, that's who he mentioned, Paul.
I mentioned Paula Nass, she was the city-appointed council member on
Paula
the
right
parks.
now is involved in a really big project.
She's got huge shoulders.
Well, we did it.
Well, or Mayor Shoulders, I'm just saying, I don't,
And probably Wendy, the city manager.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wendy,
It
I
should be
think Wendy,
I would
yeah.
think it'd be windy.
Yeah.
We
I guess what I want to do is think about who we include in.
And again, I'm not talking about earth-shattering changes. I'm talking about just tweaks. And just the recognition of responsibilities and the recognition of maybe the flow of information. But I think, and I think Dennis is working on a very good relationship with the city manager. I know Mickey has a great relationship with the mayor, and both of us have good relationships with the school, so. But again, your funding issues are they need to move quickly.
Well,
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to say is, all that's important, but I think we do have to get that millage, that in place, and get
Yeah.
it documented as quickly as possible, so we can hit the next deadline, because I don't want to miss the next deadline, okay? And that gives Kay the ability to go, I want this deadline, I want that deadline. I don't want the all of it in one.
no.
Our commission will be revisiting that next week.
Okay.
Right, but I mean, we've got to get that done, and I'm sure we can get most of it done for you. All the things
If we want to be on the November ballot,
Yeah.
August 8th.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, we
we've
would.
got
Yeah,
time.
August.
Rather do
November.
the primary, yeah.
August.
Well, I'd like to be at least the August one, just in case
Yeah.
she's got some changes or whatever, so it gives her a backup for November and not just give her one shot.
What's the deadline for the August then, do you know?
It's gonna be.
I don't know,
But we can find that out.
no. Good, if Chris comes back.
No, it was
she should
86
know.
days
Yeah, that's
back.
what- that's
86
her ballot
days?
was, Yeah.
86 prior.
86 days prior to the day of the election.
Anyway, I wanted
So
to.
mid-May.
I wanted to end this on a happy note.
Yes.
On March 12th, okay, you'll see how the very original Parks and Rec was funded with the Hard Times Party.
The Hard Times Party is the original funding source for it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
Basically, a group of people
It
get
was.
together to.
Uh-huh.
That's funny.
Yeah,
Now I know why my dad said he was part of that. I remember now.
it was. So, be ready, and so I think that you know where we're going, okay?
Okay.
And if you can get that next week,
Yep, we will.
okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Motion to go into executive session?
Said that, Larry.
To discuss,
Larry did.
Larry?
I can't remember the amounts of
Contract
contract obligations.
No, we're gonna talk about a written attorney opinion regarding a collective